Good evening, everyone. I'm looking for an approval of the agenda, please. Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Olson. On the question, please vote now. You can do a show of hands if you wish. Okay. Ready, good? Motion carried 5-1.
Oh, that's an error.
Okay. Councillor Donovan's on his way in. Okay. May I have the treaty acknowledgement and moment of reflection, please, Deputy Mayor Scryer?
The Town of Quispamsis Treaty Acknowledgement and Moment of Reflection. We'd like to respectfully acknowledge that Quispamsis exists on the territory of Wolastoqey, Maliseet, and Mi'kmaq people whose ancestors along the Passamaquoddy tribes signed a peace and friendship treaties with the British Crown in the 1700s, excuse me. We'd like to take this moment to pay respect to the elders past and present and the descendants of this traditional territory. And may we remind ourselves of the important work we have before us tonight. May we make good decisions without prejudice or bias and always in the best interest of our community, which we are here to serve.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Scryer. Have a few comments this evening. I would like to start my remarks tonight by congratulating our very own Craig Thorne of Quispamsis on a tremendous performance in the 110-meter hurdles at the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. Craig finished the qualifying heat in 13.6 seconds. He's the fastest hurdler in Canada. And then finished fifth in the 110-meter repage with a time of 13.62 seconds. Great job for Craig. And we are also proud of the way that he represented himself, his hometown of Quispamsis, and Canada in the Olympics. And we will continue to follow Craig's career as he moves forward. And he's planning on going into the 2028 Olympics. But the Olympics are not over yet. Not for Canada and not for Quispamsis. Quispamsis native Alexander Hayward has been named to the Canadian Para Cycling Team for the 2024 Paris Paralympics Games, which begin on August 28th. Alex opened the 2024 season with gold in the C3 time trial and bronze in the road race at a World Cup in Australia, and added a time trial bronze at the second stop in Belgium. At the Track Worlds in Rio, Alex took silver in the men's C3 scratch race. Alexander, your community is behind you all the way. Good luck and have a tremendous time at the Paris Olympics. And I want to thank everyone who joined us at the Arts and Culture Park on August the 5th for our annual New Brunswick Day celebrations. We had great music from the Last Call Band and a great walk and talk with David Goss. I love seeing our residents and visitors enjoying an important day on the annual calendar as we celebrate our community, our province, and each other. I was pleased to bring greetings from the town of Quispamsis to the Kennebecasis Public Library back on August the 1st, as the library marked its 40th anniversary. The library is such an important hub in our community, offering resources and programs for people of all ages. And congratulations to Nora Emerson and all the staff who volunteer and work at our public library that make it such a wonderful place for all to be. The town of Quispamsis is proud to support the library annually during our budget process in partnership with the town of Rothesay. Last week, I joined officials from Quest Canada and the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency in Riverview as the ACOA announced a financial contribution to Quest's Net Zero Communities Accelerator program. The money builds on a pilot program conducted in New Brunswick in which Quispamsis has participated since 2021. That's not to say that we have not been a part or had a climate change committee since 1998. I highlighted the benefits of this partnership, which include Quest's assistance in making our new utilities building net zero ready and securing funding for the recent wind and solar energy mapping project. Quispamsis is learning what it takes to be an energy contributor, not just an energy consumer. I've had a number of questions and comments from residents regarding the status of Ritchie Lake, and I know staff have been receiving similar messages. Right now, a consultant is conducting an assessment of the lake, and a report should be available to staff and council to consider in the coming months. The assessment includes understanding the current condition and health of the lake, jurisdictional questions, permitted uses, and more. There will be a public consultation component to this assessment, and we want to encourage everyone to offer input into this. Notice of the public consultation will be given once the town's consultant reaches that phase of the assessment. This is the final regular meeting of Quispamsis Town Council until after the Labor Day weekend. That means it is almost time for us to say goodbye to more than 20 students who joined us as summer staff this year. Our students are valuable employees to the town of Quispamsis. They manage the day-to-day operations of the pool at the Q-Plex, maintain our parks, trails, and playgrounds, and work in administration and engineering, and so much more. Thank you to all of our students for your hard work and your dedication. We are a better town because of the work that our students do. With our student staff finishing their duties, I want to remind everyone that the 97.3 The Wave Pool will close for the season on August the 30th. It's been a great summer at the pool. Our student and full-time staff have done a wonderful job maintaining the pool, and the lifeguards on duty have helped keep people safe. Also, lifeguards wrap up their season at Meenans Cove Beach and Gondola Point Beach on the Labor Day weekend. At the Gondola Point Beach, I would invite you to go and visit, and that will reveal that we have included an access mat over the sand and stones and uneven ground. That was brought forward and asked by some residents of Councillor Bigger, who brought it before council, and this council voted to have that in place, and it's there now, and we are so proud to have an accessible beach. And the summer series events at the Arts and Culture Park will end for the season next Tuesday, August the 27th. The Firefly Splash Pad will remain open as long as the weather stays warm. So follow the town's social media channels and check out our website at quispamsis.ca for closure and wrap-up information. And as summer activities wind down for another year, school is about to begin again. As a retired teacher, I am always excited to see the young minds in our community heading back to the classroom, eager to learn. Or at least that's what I want to believe. As a reminder, vehicle and pedestrian traffic will start to increase around schools very soon. So please be extra careful on the roads so that we can have a safe, healthy, and happy start to the new academic year. Thank you. I'm now looking at item number 4 on our agenda, which is disclosure of interests. Please signal. I don't see any. Presentations. Our first presentation this evening is from Model Farm Road residents regarding drainage concerns. And this evening we have 3 presenters, Downey's, McIntosh, and Ramsey. So I'm going to ask the Downeys if you would come forward, and I'm going to put the timer on. There's a limit of 10 minutes. If anyone else is presenting hears the same thing, it really isn't necessary to repeat the message because we will have received that message loud and clear. So welcome to the podium, and please give your name for the clerk.
Thank you. It's Ann Downey. Now, do I have to move this down?
Maybe.
Yeah.
And I'm Robert Downey.
And we would like to address mayor and council. The water drainage originating from Kenneth Drive to Model Farm, we feel wasn't adequately addressed nor recognized. We appreciate the interest from mayor and members of council who actually came for a site visit, and that's much appreciated. We enclosed a map with our original letter, which geographically shows there's at least 8 houses on Kenneth Drive that drain onto the properties 460 to 444 on the upper side of Model Farm Road. Each of these Model Farm Road homes, I understand, have had water issues and subsequent draining issues at the backs of their lots. Now, with new culverts and pipes, that geographical area is being directed under Model Farm at 444, and the culvert ends at the roadside, forcing the water to be dealt with on our property. Nothing has ever been done to slow that down or deal with the onslaught of water onto our property, nor the washout that came across the road. And for years, we have purchased stone, repaired our long driveway after every washout from across the road at our own expense, time, equipment, energy, so that an ambulance could safely get down to one of the houses or people could get to work. After constant restoration, we had the driveway paved to make it getting to the houses and the barns accessible after these torrential rain or snowstorms. In our area, we have wells, we have septic fields. During the heavy rains, our septic fields can become waterlogged, and excess runoff may contain E. coli. Now that's 12 septic fields across the road from us, funneling into our property and directed into the Kennebecasis River. I believe the town just had an unacceptable water test at Means Cove, and it had to close it for swimming. We only got a letter taped to our house door to say there would be construction work on a series of roads, one of which being Model Farm. We weren't aware of any other information or any meetings. Presently, the way the road is now, last weekend when one of the cattle had to leave the farm, the trailer had to park up on the road, actually totally blocking it, and they had to walk him up to the trailer because there was no way with the little bit of road remaining they could actually turn into our house driveway. Also, the person who delivers the hay to the owner of the horses can't get his trailer in the other driveway. This is all the hay that's needed to feed the horses in the winter. I was asked when this would be finished, and I replied, I really don't know. Presently, I'm not sure if an emergency vehicle, such as a fire truck, could turn into our driveway the way the road has been left. Now, with regard to drainage, we have been fortunate to have a drier summer. However, on the 10th, rain did erode some of the banks across from us. We submitted a video, and we'll show it at the end, of the brown water rushing on our property. The rain was heavy at times, but the ground was able to absorb some, excuse me, and yet we still got quite a rush of brown water from the incomplete culvert system. The deep ditch did wash and collapse in some areas. Why was the ditch going in front of 444 left sodded and filled in with no opportunity to take excess water from the dead-ended culvert? On Saturday, there was no water coming from 444 to in front of 438. However, we received excessive water from the dead-ended culvert. And the reason I call it dead-ended is because it's directed at us. If it came out the top, it would come to us. We are hereby requesting the town acknowledge the drainage issues, the erosion, and divert some or all of this untreated runoff water to prevent further damage to our property. And then Bob wants to add a few words.
Mayor O'Hara, town councilors, thank you very much for hearing us, and thank you very much for the interest that you've put in the coming out to Model Farm. In my opinion, for one landowner to be expected to accept all the water from several properties is really unrealistic. As mentioned, I have spent countless hours repairing and grading the damage caused by this runoff myself, all the while believing there were runoffs sharing the distribution of water. I assumed that all the way down that there were several cutoffs, but there was none. It all comes towards us. What was once a small trench is now a gorge of 15 to 20 feet deep. Also, the shoulder of the road over the culvert has eroded, making it unmaintainable. Our neighbors used to help us maintain it and mow it on a regular basis, and now can't even walk a mower across it. While I was doing our repairs, I've watched while other properties were being repaired using town resources. We look forward to discussions that will solve this situation. We believe solving this drainage issue now, while the culverts are accessible, is far more feasible and far more economical than addressing it after the paving. Thank you very much.
I just wanted to add, I got some new information this morning, and it was one of the neighbors from the other side of Kenneth, and her husband is recovering from critical E. coli poisoning. And their well has been now tested, and it is not acceptable. So when you consider geographically those 12 properties that are draining onto us, and then we're sending it into the Quispamsis, I just wanted to flag that. That was totally new information this morning, and he is recovering, but it was critical. So I know there's other neighbors here that may want to speak, so I just put the four, you know, who wants to ask any questions, or if
Well,
one of the
thank
neighbors
you.
wants to.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Downey. I'll go through, and if the McIntoshes wanted to speak, or the Ramseys,
Thank
we'll
you.
have them come up, and then if council has anything to ask them, we'll have that at the end.
The McIntoshes will not be here because
They're not
they are
here?
province.
Okay. Mr. Ramsey, did you have anything that you wanted to add, or are you good?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Just give your name.
Darlene Ramsey, 448 Model Farm. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you, Mayor and Council. Okay. We are concerned, as our letter, with the steepness of our bank, and I know it's not feasible. You said probably to pipe the whole thing because of the water would flow over that onto the road, but in our driveway, we had asked if we could have a couple of extensions in just to take that steepness from the driveway, because it is quite deep. And right now, they're putting in the large rock as we left, and then sloping that, but it's still gonna be fairly steep. And our grandkids play there, although we keep them away from that, but you can't watch trying to do that and worry about that, or you're mowing the lawn. Worried about giving away or going over the side, you know, so.
And there is another thing, I don't know, we didn't put in the letter, but we were wondering if our property could be defined between 444 and 448 at the bottom, where the pipes are. There's a large pipe that goes quite far in front of our property, and it's connected to 444. In the past, we had a lot of issues with previous owners.
Taking that lawn over, like we tried to maintain it ourselves, and
The front.
The front.
So
And
we just like to have that maybe defined a little bit, that this is where 448 starts and this is 444. And I mean, I don't mean anything drastic, but something that would be,
so that cars can't park there either. It seemed like that was used a lot for somebody to pull in there and park, and then they did slope it a bit, but we hope that I know it's not our property, but we do pay the tax and it's our frontage, and you'd like to think that you maintain it. I guess,
is that it?
I think that's all. Thank
Okay.
you for
Listening to us?
listening.
Okay.
Okay.
Wasn't really prepared, but
Yeah, no,
Thanks a
good
lot.
job. Thank you. Okay.
Excuse me, Your Worship, I was regular, that they took me off, I spoke to Mr. Morris.
I just have to get approval from council. That would be the proper procedure, Lisa. It's moved by Councillor Olson to allow Mr. McCluskey to speak, seconded by Councillor Bigger. All those in favor show a raise of hands, and we'll have the clerk get that in. Yes, you may speak.
My name is. All the issues. We got quite a. Completely covered over. I'm re- most people around. In a stream there, and they enclosed it all, is that correct? I remember when the road washed out, the Model Farm Road washed out because of that, the town come and fixed that. And what he's speaking about, there's a small pipe there, so I don't know how it's gonna take all the water, I guess, but I'm not an engineer, I'm just
No,
on the property
nor am
there.
I.
So that's all I'm concerned about, is that the water runs off and goes over the road in the winter. And then in the summer, if it erodes away, is the town gonna come back and fix it? Because they've taken out in front of my, my residence, there was a lot of trees, and they're all gone, which my wife actually likes, but they're all gone, so it's all clear there now. So it's probably even gonna be a lot more runoff, so.
Well, thank you very
Okay.
much for expressing your concerns, and as you've noted, the work there is not completed at this point in time. So I will open the floor to council. Deputy Mayor Scryer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a few questions for Director of Engineering, just so that I totally understand, and thank you for your note. And so when Mr. and Mrs. Downey referred to deadheading, was it? No, you call it deadhead? Dead ending. Is that a normal practice for us to do that, or is there something else that you
Well,
would refer to?
as Ms. Downey sort of clarified, it's not actually dead-ended. It's just that it doesn't continue down the road's shoulders. It goes into an established drainage path that's been there for the extended period of time. So it's more a case of the flows as they continue to go through that way, as development occurs. I believe the inquiry is, what is the town prepared to do for erosion protection, things of that nature. You know, if we look at that downhill side, there's, everybody sort of, the road falls away, so the water all goes down through that side. So we've got the culverts on the uphill side, as Mr. McCluskey and Mr. McIntosh and I believe Mr. Ramsey is sort of on their side. What that is the more water flows through there, the deeper the ditches get. So it's a balance of making sure that you're spreading the water equally through the areas. And what we've done is we've used existing drainage paths that I would assume that DTI or Department of Transportation back in the day, or whoever built the roads back in the day, had established. And so we're continuing to follow those paths. It's how we now manage the flows after the fact. And so the through path that's there now, the existing culvert that was there, we've tied into that. Further down on Charity Lane, as we go past that, that's going to be next year's phase if it's approved in the budget. We've all got to look at what happens to the flows at the bottom of Charity Lane, because there's going to be water that goes down towards the civic address. It's Dobson and Driscoll's property through there, and there's another one at the bottom of the old Perry Point Road. So there's flows that go through there. So what we're trying to do is manage those flows along the edge of the road where we can, and then use existing paths off to it. Now it's a case of what do we do with those flows when they're in those paths. The flow that comes off of Kenneth Drive is long been established. I believe even before Mr. McIntosh was there, the neighbor that owned the property put in a pipe and piped it through his lawn to the edge of the shoulder. The town's come in after the fact, and because a few times it's blown out and cut out the roadway, we've actually had to tie that into the system. It's undersized for the flow that, even back when he put it in, that it's private property, it's not our pipe, so we're just trying to deal with what we have through there. And if that's the case, that particular resident comes back and looking for assistance, I guess that would be the prerogative of council if they want to do something on that nature. If we go up onto Kenneth Drive, the homes that are there, again, it's the side of a hill, everything's sloped that way, so it's going to be, if you're diverting flows off of Kenneth Drive, it's substantial storm sewer to try to get everything back to the high side of Kenneth Drive, and then down and around, and then now all you're doing is pushing the water down to Charity Lane, and then down to the bottom of again, to Dobson's Driscoll property. So what we're trying to do is manage the flows that are in that area. And at this stage, it's a case of, as the mayor mentioned, the project's not finished. We have some erosion control and erosion protection to introduce in a lot of the spots. Mr. Ramsey's request for a widening of the driveway, that's something that we can look at. The Downies, asking to meet on site and go through different spots and say where are the trouble spots, what will we do to look at flow abatement, reduction of the force of the water, finding the corner spots and introducing some erosion protection there. We can look at that as well. And then whether it's covered under this capital program or whether you introduce it in a subsequent budget, that's something that we can take back to council with amounts as well. We're balancing a fine design here. As Mr. McCluskey mentioned, we've widened the road to accommodate AT. The council wanted to see those AT corridors in place, but that means you only have a certain amount of width within the right-of-way. That pushes everything back a little bit so that trees that were in the municipal right-of-way or close to are now being removed. The banks that were there that have been stable over time have been pushed back. So now you're trying to reinstate stable ground by using heavy stone, and we're doing the best we can with that. As far as the guarantee of going back after the fact to effect repairs if something happens, obviously if it's in the town right-of-way, that's something that we would undertake to do. We go along and we repair with stone and things like that. And then until we see the actual impact of the flows over time, then we can adjust our design accordingly. It is a strange year that you don't have a lot of rain that you can sort of monitor as you go. But we're doing the best we can with the flows that we've got right now. So that's the overview that we're working with right now. As I said, it's not a project that's completed. We have the capacity to go in and talk to the residents, the neighbors of certain specific areas, and deal with what we can. And if it exceeds the budget that we have in this particular project, then we come back to council and let you know what's going on.
Could I just do a follow-up? Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Loge. I'm just concerned, we know that the climate change is happening and that we're getting more violent storms all the time. And if you're like me and you live at the bottom of the hill, sometimes you see the results of those storms coming rushing at you or coming up the river at you too. I just want to be clear that we're not diverting water to any property.
No, the paths that we've been building on are the established paths. So we're not collecting water, new water. The water that's flowing now is the catchment areas are the same. As fact, if we have a request for development up off Kenneth, and as part of the development proposals, that individual's going to be required to come to the town with stormwater abatement, which is some retention ponds, some diversion, things like that, and then come work with their stormwater management plan to show us where they're going to be taking the water. At this stage, you're dealing with 1 acre, 2 acre plus size lots. If, ultimately, if over time the density increases so that somebody, you can go to higher density lots and people can build more houses, then obviously you're going to see more drainage or more runoff. But as it sits now in that rural environment, and if, assuming that the same design stays in place, we're dealing with the same paths. So we're not creating water, so to speak. So what we've got to do, as I said earlier, is manage the flows during those peak times. And how do you do that? To the Downey's point is erosion control. To the Ramsey's point is safety and ditch depth. The same with Mr. McCluskey, and that's what we're going to be trying to do if that's what council directs.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Loge. Councillor Bigger, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks to the folks for coming in tonight and representing the situation over there in your neighborhood, and had a good chance to get my eyeballs on it. I appreciated the chance to chat and to see the horses and everything. Through you, Your Worship, to the Director of Engineering and Works, I just wanted to say I really appreciate the fulsome nature of his report here. I find that it's I'm struck by how synonymous the issues mentioned by the Downies specifically, but generally the whole crew from over there, how it lines up with what is being sort of suggested by our Director of Engineering Works. So I appreciate that. And just generally, I know that, as you're saying, coming together to kind of have a look and see what can be done is sort of the strategy as it goes along. I just wanted to ask about two things. One is, and I'm just basing this a little bit on the conversations that I had with the conversation I had with the Downies, but I think you mentioned it actually, Mr. Lozier, about like flow mitigation. Are there like, so the idea is not so much that there's going to be you know, that pipe that shoots under the road and comes out over on the Downey side in front of 444. So if there's not going to be another pipe, it's not going to be extended down and then, you know, down, as you say, the base of Charity, notwithstanding the work that's going to keep happening down that, keep stretching down that way. So that being said, are there tools or strategies for like mitigation of flow just to slow it down some so that there's less, so there's not so much of a chance of, you see what I'm getting at, of overflow of that pipe or whatever? I believe we discussed that a little bit.
Yeah.
And that,
So we'll be looking at two aspects. First off, short term is going to be, yes, it's going to be erosion control and abatement of the power of the water. So that's, and if council drives off the Vincent Road and you look up Angel Lane, for example, right beside the pump station, that's an example where we had a lot of water coming off the Queensbury area. And so what we ended up doing was creating what's called a plunge pool. Water would go in, sort of catch an area. You see one at the top of McCarran Drive, a small version of that plunge pool where the water comes in, has a chance to circulate, dissipate power, and then trickle out over time. So in low flows or medium flows, it dissipates it to just a normal flow. In high flows, what you do is now we look at sequential locations of these ponds where they go down, or plunge pools where they go down. And we also look at appropriately sizing the stone that's used in the drainage part of the bottom of the basin, so that itself acts as a dissipation for the energy of the water. With respect to diverting flows, as I touched on a little earlier, we've got a developer that's looking at that upper area, and by incorporating stormwater management, if there are extraneous flows that may have been going that way, now we have the ability to, as part of the development, instead of just automatically shooting it off to the road, if the grade lines permit, we can actually pull some of that back and redirect it to their own stormwater system. So the hope is that as properties develop, and if we get to that stage, now we're managing stormwater at the upper end on Kenneth, but on the bottom side, we're also managing stormwater impacts on the lower ends. And as far as the lower ends, as you mentioned, Charity Lane, prior to the stormwater, prior to the street capital program next year, we're the same consultants that's working with us now on our stormwater management plan and our asset management plan for stormwater infrastructure. We've engaged them to do a comprehensive drainage basin. So when the time comes from Cherry Lane down, it's just not going to be willy-nilly. You're going to be doing the same thing that we're doing now. Are we going down an established path? Should it be changed? What are the legalities? What's the jurisdiction? What design has to be in place to do this, to incorporate stormwater design and the AT initiatives that council wanted to see. So it is a comprehensive package where you start at the top of the hill. Unfortunately, when you look at some of the, and even in my report, council can see the blue paths. These are predictive stream paths that existed or pre-existed our work, and so what we're trying to do is work within those pre-existing paths, right, and manage the water in those routes. So we can appreciate the fact that it's a change to what's the streetscape that's there, but for us the consolation is that we're not altering flows. We're trying to manage the flows that we have. We're not creating new routes or new amounts, but it goes back to managing the flows that we do have, Your Worship.
And just the last thing that I'll just ask, I think you just touched on it, is I just want to make sure I understand you correctly, that as there may be some capacity for some of that downflow that's coming down through those pre-existing, downflows, as you say. Some of that may be managed through down the grade, if the grade accommodates along Kenneth and that sort of thing, as opposed to all just,
That's correct.
Water seems to like gravity a lot, that's for sure. But
If you can figure that one out, I think you get a better chance.
I'm working on it.
The 70 million Lotto Max tonight, I think
Give me a minute.
You'd be making more money. But that's, you've got, in essence, you've got the sort of the gist of it is that we manage what we can. The Kenneth Drive is an area that it's an older area, undeveloped, but as people choose to develop it, we got to manage the outflows from there. That may cut off some of the surface water that you'll see spring up in different locations. And then we work with the residents where we have some impacts, work within the budget that council has allocated to us, and then come back to you if we have a significant impact otherwise.
Well, thank you very much, Your Worship. I would move that the engineering staff meet on site with the residents who have contacted our mayor and council to address drainage and erosion control problems under the scope of the current project budget, Any work identified that requires additional budget considerations be brought back for consideration in the upcoming budget deliberations.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Councillor Bigger and seconded by Councillor Luck. And I think there are still a couple of questions. Councillor Donovan, going to next in queue, Deputy Mayor Scryer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just had one more question for the Director of Engineering, and I'm not an engineer either, so I'm wondering about a catch basin. What the difference is between a catch basin and what's being done there? Like, could we not put in, like, the concrete, you know, the lid we pick up, the catch basin? And would that not allow for extra overflow?
So, Your Worship, the catch basin essentially is an inlet point for the storm line. So a catch basin basically is just a spot that the pipes join, that it can either change direction or change grade, or the water gets in the surface. So if the water's still going through the catch, it still has to come out and go someplace. So a catch basin really is not going to do anything substantial here. You can use catch basins as an energy dissipator, but the water still has to come out and go down the path that it's going to follow. So the basins really are not, it's not, in this particular scenario, we think we might get a better effect with the plunge pools. If we look at the catch basins and the size of the pipe and we can accommodate it and use a series, but on its own, a catch basin is really not a tool to, the water still has to come out and go someplace, basically.
So just so I'm clear, could you not hook the catch basin onto the pipe that currently goes down the Model Farm Road? To
But
keep the water going down the Model Farm
But
Road?
what we're saying is the water going down Model Farm, if we continue down the Model Farm Road, basically it's the same as if, you know, the reference to the dead end pipe is if you take it out and just let the pipe continue down the ditch line, it still has to deal, you still have to deal with it at the bottom. And right now, the line at Charity Lane, the outlet at the Driscolls and the Dobson's property would never handle the flows that are there. These were established over time. As I think one of the residents mentioned, there are spots where the water goes down to divide it to get to the river, and this is one of those spots. If we took all the water off the side hill and went to one central spot, then you would want to have a significantly better designed system than is there now. You would be washing homes away with the level of flows that would be going down through there, because now you'd have three outlets where there's only currently one. So you'd have 3 times the flow is going into one spot. So that's, and then the ditch lines going down that side of Model Farm Road would have to be substantially oversized, deepened, or again, with storm pipes large enough to handle that. So what we're doing is we're dividing it up into manageable chunks and then dealing with the outflows as we move along each side.
Thank you. Councillor Luck, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. First, I wanted to thank the residents for bringing this to our attention. The reality is that we do have older infrastructure, and again, as we improve, it's good that we know these things exist. Through you to our Director of Engineering, Mr. Logier, I'm wondering, in terms of the motion, it talks about basically meeting on site with residents. And I was more so, looking for a bit of a process, more so for the residents in question and sitting here tonight so they kind of know. I want to make sure that they know that if, in the future, if they're not happy, because that was one of the concerns, is that, they definitely can reach out again to council or to the town to kind of express that. But, in the motion, it says, you'll meet on site with the residents. And I'm just wondering, for the benefit of everyone here, with questions, what will that look like for the residents?
What we'll do is, Your Worship will contact each of the residents, find a time that's agreeable, that myself or some of my staff can meet with them, go over the issues that have been brought forward to council, identify the remedial work that we were proposing, look at the work that's being suggested, if it fits within the budget that we have or the scope that the contractor can do for us in the short term. So for example, adding a length of pipe onto Mr. Ramsey's driveway could be done relatively quickly. Something like that, so be it. With respect to the Downies, for example, we have some work planned for the immediate outlet of the cross culvert. Then it would be meeting with them, walking the path down and saying, okay, here's a corner, should that be protected? Here's the cross culvert, should that have a head wall? Those types of things till it gets to the river, and identifying the remedial action on each of these spots, tagging the dollar to this, can it be covered under the current budget? Does it have to come back to council for approval?
Okay.
So that's the plan of attack, Your Worship.
Just wanted That's great. Thank you very much for clarifying that. I just wanted to ask that kind of on the behalf of the residents so they would know what the next steps were. And just one other comment is I thought you did a really good job summarizing a lot of the issues and kind of the solutions or, kind of some of the barriers. And I just want to know, make sure the residents knew that they can access that report online. So if you haven't read it, it is a nice summary of kind of everything, all the concerns kind of put into one staff report. So if just to let the residents know tonight that if they were interested, there's a good report that's online. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Luck. Councillor Olson, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is an ongoing problem that we have throughout our community where we have to address water problems, and we have instructed staff through council to investigate trouble spots and to come up with recommendations, and that's why we have a consultant hired now for the town to look at all these trouble spots and come up with some recommendations. Unfortunately, what happens is the 100-year storms are not happening every 100 years, happening every other month. And with climate change and the volume of water that we're dealing with, the pipes that are in the ground now are obviously undersized. And so what happens is they can't handle the water that's being directed through them, like happened maybe 5 to 10 years ago. And so we have to go in there and we have to increase the size of that pipe. But consequently, that adds to the problem sometimes down the road from that discharge. But we have different ways of addressing that with putting rock in or creating some retention ponds to let the water dissipate through the area in a controlled fashion. And the other thing is that any new subdivisions or any new developments that are going to impact water flow has to provide a plan prior to approvals for construction and that. So in this particular case on the Downey property, as the Director of Engineering alluded to, he's going to visit with the Downeys and investigate the gorge that is now existing there, and maybe put in some large rocks to slow down the water discharge and try and secure the banks of the ditch so that there's not further erosion. So it's definitely not going to go away. It's probably going to get worse as time goes on. But I think we've got additional water coming down through from Kenneth Drive, and we just have to manage that. See how that works out, going further down Kenneth Drive down towards Charity Lane. So anyway, I look forward to hearing from our Director of Engineering on how that's going to be rectified to the satisfaction of the residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Olson. It's been moved by Councillor Bigger, seconded by Councillor Luck on the question. Please vote now.
Deputy Mayor Squire,
Yes, she's in favor.
Donovan,
Councillor Donovan, yes.
Luck,
Luck, yes.
Olson.
Sometimes we have technical difficulties. Motion carried 6-0. Thank you very much. Moving on to item B, 5B, Housing Needs Assessment and Action Strategy Update. Welcome Jennifer Brown, Dillon Consulting in attendance, and Stephen Stone is the wingman tonight. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here and expressing your concerns. Jennifer, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, to Council for having us back. Really quite eager to give you this update. I'm not quite sure who I'm looking at in terms of slides. Chrissy? Okay. So we can advance to that second slide. So I'm here to just give you a very quick, very brief update on both the municipal plan and zoning law bylaw project as well as the housing action strategy. The municipal plan and zoning bylaw project really is about aligning your existing municipal plan with the statements of provincial interest, as well as providing some new direction around growth as you're experiencing new levels of development pressure, and aligning kind of some new policy for intensification. We're also looking at overhauling your zoning bylaw to modernize and update those regulations. The housing action strategy is kind of the big ticket item that I think is a top of mind for you folks this evening. So really what the housing action strategy is from a very high level standpoint, it's really intended to better understand your housing needs, and to create a robust action strategy, measurable, tangible actions that both staff and council can implement, as well as with support from the community to kind of get you in a place where you can achieve those housing goals. Switch slides here. Perfect. So in terms of project timeline, we kicked this off December into January, where we're doing background and review and analysis. The first big kind of public phase that you'll remember is round one of engagement, where we did, and we'll do a bit of an overview here of what we did with engagement to public and stakeholders. That went through February and March-ish. We've been working very closely with your staff throughout that process and throughout this next phase to draft some preliminary updates to the municipal plan, as well as prepare for that zoning bylaw update. We've also been undertaking, with the support of staff and in collaboration with staff, funding applications to get the next phases of work on these projects undertaken. So that's been kind of moving forward from April to present day. Next slide. In terms of the future project timelines, this is pretty critical. We're looking at scheduling a staff and council workshop for both the municipal plan and zoning bylaw, as well as the housing needs assessment, or housing action strategy, in September, with the expectation that the housing action strategy be made public in the month of October for feedback, and then looking to kind of proceed with those municipal plan updates, zoning bylaw updates, and round two of engagement, November through March 2025. These are big undertakings. These are by no means kind of, something we're doing off the side of our desk. We're working very closely with staff regularly to make sure that these projects continue to roll. The way these projects are administered, however, contractually include phases. So every piece of work you're seeing and I'm discussing tonight is done through multiple phases. Every time we complete a task, we're coming back to the table with a new or updated scope of work, and that requires some negotiation, some contract nuance there. So administratively, things are feeling a little bit longer, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the work's not going on in the background. We're just administratively proceeding through phased approach. I'm going to take you for a very quick kind of round of a preliminary what we heard through engagement for both of these projects. Just as a reminder, we did do pretty robust engagement with the community and stakeholders, online surveys, interactive maps, community open houses, focus groups. Really good numbers here in the community. We're really hoping that those numbers with interest can bolster in the second round, but over 450 survey responses is excellent. Around 300 plus in-person folks coming through those open houses, which is also really good news. We tend to see that we reach a different demographic of folks in person than we do through the online surveys. So there's not a ton of crossover there. That actually adds additional, confidence to these numbers and confidence to the themes that we're hearing, because we're getting a broader segment of the population, which is great. We had about just over 50 people participate in a variety of focus groups. Thousands of people reviewed this the project website. Continue to check that website, so it's there and active. So the information continues to be available to the public. In terms of what we heard, we have some kind of key themes here. We heard a lot, no surprise, about housing diversity and affordability. Heard a lot about transportation. Obviously, no big surprise. I'm sure you hear as counselors, you hear that quite a bit. Small town character is a big one. Again, not a big surprise. I think that it's no secret that Quispamsis is under a lot of development pressure, but we're also looking at residents who want to hold on to the character that got them here in the first place. Balancing that character is going to be certainly top of mind for folks as we move forward. Infrastructure and services. We heard an example of this evening around upgrading public infrastructure and services. We also, in terms of the housing action strategy, heard roughly like kind of 3 big themes here. There is a want for more housing choice and affordability. So folks want to age in place. That's really where we're looking at a lot of that feedback coming from. Safety and satisfaction. So kind of general satisfaction with their current housing, but also current concerns about as they move to that next phase of housing, the affordability in that next segment of housing typologies. In terms of actions and what we heard from through focus groups and through the public, there were some suggestions, welcome suggestions around reducing permitting fees, building affordable units, kind of, you know, we need more kind of concrete solutions for that, and incentivizing development. These are big, challenging things to undertake, and they're going to by no means be silver bullet type solutions, but I think it's what we're seeing is that the community is very tied into the development trends and also the pressures that council is being put under, the town is being put under with these new development pressures and new types of development coming through the door. So what does this mean for kind of policy and regulation? So there needs to be some updates to kind of promote that diverse housing ask. So folks are looking for different types of housing. They're looking to age into new housing in the community. Some policy direction and council actionable items to address that affordability. Infrastructure, I think infrastructure is always top of mind because as we talk about new types of housing, including new types of density, you know, the availability of infrastructure and the quality of infrastructure will continue to be top of mind. So clear and actionable strategy for council to budget for infrastructure improvements and also direct staff to seek funding for infrastructure improvements are something that came up in discussion quite a bit. We heard quite a bit in terms of economic development. You know, we're really looking at a population who wants to live and work in their town, and there's a lot of kind of feedback we've received here looking to attract services as a way to retain population growth. There is an ask to right-size regulation, and this is a term that's coming up more and more, creating a development framework that attracts what you're looking for. So creating a framework that is very much targeted to attracting what the community is asking for. What the community is currently asking for in these preliminary results is a diverse housing offer. What they're looking, though, in terms of this creating a development framework that is maybe more robust, maybe more flexible, we're not looking to create additional administrative burdens. We're attempting to streamline development processes through updating regulations to be more clear, to be more common sense, so that anybody can go through these bylaws and understand what the targets are. I think that these are like by no means surprises, I don't think, to anybody in terms of what we're hearing from the community, but they will take a lot of thought, a lot of kind of focused attention into how to implement them at the appropriate scale. We've been having plenty of conversations with Dwight and his team about what that looks like, and as we now move towards action, we're going to need to start talking to council about getting buy-in, which is what getting buy-in, but also building capacity of what these changes are looking like, what the data is telling you, and providing a bit of kind of, support to the community to come along with these changes so we can ensure that come adoption time, that you're confident that what's presented to you is in line with what the community's expectations are and are aligning, allowing you to get to the goals that the community has dictated from the get-go. It's by no means an easy piece of work. It definitely takes time, but the ball is rolling, and once that ball starts rolling, it doesn't really stop. So in the short term, we're looking at September, like I said at the top here, a council and staff workshop to get into kind of some of that feedback we've received from the community and some draft approaches to address that feedback through both the housing action strategy as well as the municipal plan policy and zoning bylaw regulation. And then we're looking to present that housing action strategy to the community and to council for council's review, but also for community review and feedback. It's going to be a very critical component here. Long term, we're looking at a complete draft of the municipal plan as well as an update to the zoning bylaw through fall and winter 2025, with the expectation we'll hit round 2 of engagement. Round 2 of engagement is really shaped around draft approaches to these big ticket items, draft approaches to residential development, draft approaches to housing affordability, economic development, commercial development, all of that kind of big box approach, going back to the community and say, did we get this right based on what we heard? We're expecting that to hit in winter, and then legislative approvals, tentatively, we're hoping to bring you final documents vetted by the public in the spring of next year. Happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Bigger, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you very much, folks, for being here again tonight. Nice to see you guys. I have a couple of questions, but I think I'll make a motion, and then if I could ask just to come back to ask my questions. I'd like to move that Jennifer Brown and Stephen Stone, the coolest name in consulting as far as I'm concerned, be thanked for their presentation. Council looks forward to presentation of the completed housing needs assessment and action strategy this fall. So I'll make that motion, and then if I could just ask.
Been moved by Councillor Bigger, seconded by Deputy Mayor Scryer. Go ahead, Councillor Bigger.
Thank you very much. Yes, on the question. Thank you. Just get back to my information here. Technology. Yeah, I appreciate the insights from this. Although it's fairly high level, and that is to say, there's a lot yet to kind of be sort of revealed, you know. And I take note of the mention of the an in-camera workshop with our new CAO and council in September. Of course, our HAF 2 application deadline is September 15. And can I assume that this happens before that deadline?
Can likely, it's not by any means
Right.
necessary, but it probably is a would be nice, but not a critical from our standpoint. But we'll take direction from you and staff on that. I would love if you were to recommend to staff what the lean here from council is. If the want is to meet before half is due, certainly a direction to staff to do that and bring us to the table would be very welcome. I think it's important to note that your housing needs assessment, that was the preliminary assessment that was done as part of your first application, is still sufficient for you to check that box. The draft housing needs, housing action strategy can be provided as supplementary material. You're not necessarily losing out here. It's just a matter of us refining that application based on your numbers. The expectation is that your action strategy that was provided as the part 1, the HAF 1.0, is still quite sufficient. There's going to be some updates to prove that you're very serious about this application, and one of those items that proves that is the undertaking of the housing action strategy as well as the municipal plan update and zoning bylaw update. So that will need to be updated. But I think that there's a bit of, your application is essentially good to go as of tomorrow, but let's supplement with this extra piece.
Well, I understand from our planning officer that.
Councillor Bigger, if I could just go to Mr. Colburn just for a moment.
Sure.
He may have some more information on that.
Thank you, Your Worship. So with respect to the application, I've attended a couple of webinars, and in essence, in terms of CMHC, and what's been communicated is those who are unsuccessful, those applications have been rolled over into this round. And the bulk of the information that was in those applications are in this application, with a couple of exceptions and some things you need to go in to review and check and give you an opportunity to update your initiatives. Myself and Stephen and Jennifer will be meeting tomorrow to start that process. So as Jennifer's indicated, taking the initiatives of starting the housing needs assessment, having to the point where we've heard the community, we at least have some draft strategies in place, to me is a key element to moving this application forward. I think we are more than in a good area to hit that September 15th deadline. I think the bulk of the work is done. So that I don't think, at this stage, I'm not concerned with. It's giving us an opportunity to look at what we've heard, makes a few adjustments, and move that forward. Just building on some of the comments from Jennifer in terms of what we've heard and in terms of getting the right size regulations. One of the reasons this has taken a little while is because from what we've heard and looking at what we need, this is really the first time, I know since in the 20 years I've been here, that we really said, let's determine what our housing needs are. And as I've indicated, in some other communication, this report is not a receive and file document. This report will need council's engagement, not just this council, but council in the future. So when we're looking at some of the decisions and strategies that we brought forward, we're looking at the crafting of policies in terms of how do we help meet the housing demands and what are we doing to support development, whether that's a non-for-profit organization or it's a developer for profit. Some of those things that may be coming forward will be the ask of council to allocate in budgets actually money for incentive programs, something that we don't have. I'm not sure if you're aware, but this past week or maybe last week, there was a report in CBC about a community in Saskatchewan that was giving $30,000 to anybody who built a dwelling unit. You built the dwelling unit, you passed inspection, you were ready to move in, here's your $30,000 to incentivize development. Now, will we be giving $30,000 to every developer? Probably not. But it's that principle. And those are the things that are coming, something that is currently not a line item in our budget. But this is being the ask of developers. We are getting asked, can you waive a permit fee? Can you waive development fees? Can you contribute? At this stage, those asks come to staff, but staff doesn't have a policy that says, yes, if you build X number of units, here's what you qualify for. Or if you integrate X number of affordable units, here's what you qualify for. So this is the reason why it is taking some time, is this is a significant key document that we need to get right because it shapes where we move, the policy we form, but also it shapes our municipal plan, our strategic plan, our zoning bylaws. So it's not advantageous to anybody to bring policies forward if we can't act on them. So this is the reason why we want to reach out to the new CAO and reach out to council to get them involved, to say, here's what we're thinking, what are your thoughts? And what we're thinking is a reflection of the asks of the community. So thank you, Your Worship.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Colburn. Go ahead, Councilor
And
Baker.
I agree with everything that our development officer just offered up there. And the urgent nature of that is reflected in so many ways. Like you mentioned, that deal out in Saskatchewan. And that's kind of what motivates my comments tonight, because I feel that I know that kind of aggregating and sort of digesting and I guess arranging the proper strategy out of the information that we've collected in is taking a long time. It takes a long time, but I'm just so desperately eager to get data that truly represents the needs that exist in our community. And I feel that this speaks mostly in generalities, and which is fine. And this isn't the forum to. I mean, that's why we're having a presentation coming up. So perhaps this isn't the forum to kind of lay that all out. And I greatly appreciate you and I were back and forth a bit on an email recently, and that Appendix A document that I have that I got from you, that builds on goes all the way back to almost a year ago, that there was that desktop sort of internet scrape that you did on, Mr. Stone did, I should say, for the minutes, whatever, on sort of from census data and so on about, statistics here in our town. We, of course, have a housing committee that's trying to understand the needs of, and we have our working water working committee that's trying to understand how these things all feather together, of course, as we've discussed at these meetings. And so I'm just really eager to see. I'm perfectly happy with the reality that to learn that so much of the legacy information from our first HAF app is perfectly good for the second one. It's not like back to the drawing board all over and whatever. So that's great. I'm so eager to get kind of my teeth into some of the statistical data and whatnot that really applies to our town, and to ensure that we're really addressing these deficiencies that are just going to and deficits that are just going to continue to grow, even as we're entertaining some new development even tonight, which I'm excited about. But one last thing I'll just ask is the bullet point you have on page 9, I guess it is, for October 2024, housing action strategy presented to council. Is that built on an assumption of success with the HAF application? I mean, is it pending that, or?
No, you're gonna see the draft, the final.
Yeah.
So it remains in draft until you adopt it.
Right.
But you'll be presented that housing action strategy regardless.
Okay.
Listen, the half application's going in.
Right.
Regardless. And there will be a window of time that we can add supplementary material to that.
I see.
So we're gonna take advantage of that to an extent. But we still need to keep that other ball rolling while half rolls at
Right.
the same time. So it's imperative that, in that October meeting, you will have already seen the
Right.
action strategy in draft form, provided feedback on that, and given us the go-ahead to go out to the public. That kicks off that public component.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate everybody's hard work. Thank you very much.
Can I just make one quick comment with the Housing Committee? So there is an opportunity here for the Housing Committee to play a part in implementing that housing action strategy. I'm understanding that this is a relatively new committee. I think that they've yet to be involved in this process, and it's critical that they become involved in this process. They are an absolute resource and a steward of an action strategy like this. So given that the committee is struck, it's something that we'll take back to staff as a request to pull them in a very kind of robust way, because it will take pressure off of staff, it takes pressure off of council, and then they can be the conduit to information as well back to council about how you're doing, the measurable targets, how the draft is coming, the changes that are proposed. So, the action strategy should be something that is consistently reviewed, and a housing action team can certainly steward that through in a very practical way.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Councillor Bigger. And that's been part of the problem with the Housing Committee, is that we knew that you were working on this through Dylan, and we just didn't know where to pick up the pieces. So with that, I'm going to go to Deputy Mayor Scryer.
Thank you for the update. I really appreciate it. I know that when we applied for the first round of funding, we referred to it as a desktop
Yes.
analysis, and now we're going to go a little deeper.
Yes.
And we've heard what our residents have said. I'm very pleased with the turnout and the numbers. I think they're excellent. And so kudos to our community. What I'm concerned with when we talk about housing as well is our current workforce in Quispamsis. And we are a bedroom community. We don't have any industry in Quispamsis, so a lot of our workforce would be a softer type of workforce. We're talking about general retail. We're talking about the nursing homes, childcare centers, dentist office, that softer type of industry. And so I'm really curious about that workforce and how they fit into our housing strategy. I have no idea if half of our workforce live in other areas and commute to Quispamsis. We need to catch that and find out where our workforce is. Because if they're not living in Quispamsis, and what are the reasons why? Is it because of housing?
Affordability.
So if it's because of affordability in Quispamsis, and you're working in a job that doesn't allow for the type of rents that are being asked, or as an example, or it's pretty hard to get a little bungalow in Quispamsis anymore for $199. So I really want to make sure that that's captured in the data. And I think that is really important in the application. That I'm glad to hear Mr. Colburn say they're going to beef it up, because I really think it needs to be beefed up.
Yeah,
that we need to put a little bit more oomph into that, and just, that's my own personal opinion about the workforce.
Yeah.
And, we always think that we're very light on the workforce, but there's a lot happening out here. There's a lot of people working within Quispamsis, and if we do more housing, then maybe we'll have more opportunities for economic growth, because the housing is available. So
Yeah, workforce is, through you, your worship, to the deputy, workforce is a data set that is explored in the action strategy. It was explored in the preliminary as well, but it is detailed, in more detail in the housing action strategy. That's coming, the action plan, sorry, that's coming your way for review in September.
So is there a sheet or a data cheat sheet for council to see that sort of gives us our breakdown of our data?
So
Like,
when
what's
we
our
talk
vacancy rate? Like, how many of affordable units are there in Quispamsis? Do we have that?
I
at the
think we have some, so there, some of it we have, some of it we don't, because it simply does not exist. So we work with different data companies. We use Environics data. So we purchase data so that we can snap that data to the boundaries of Quispamsis. So it is much more detailed than your traditional kind of StatsCan data set.
Right.
Which StatsCan does provide workforce, but it's very segmented. This will provide a bit more robust information. The action strategy that you'll see next month will provide an overview of that data. It's not giving you raw data, it's reporting on that data. If there is kind of that cheat sheet piece, I think that's something we can take away, because it will likely form a bit of a like executive summary almost document that it's more easily digestible than the entire strategy itself. We've discussed that as kind of one of our final tasks for this project is come up with something that, again, is maybe something that could, you're looking at it and you understand the kind of key hit points. I think that we're trying to leave that to the end so that we can get through the larger project to understand what's really critical to council, what's really critical to the community, and pull out those big numbers, those big data sets for that document. I think understanding the expectations, when you say like a cheat sheet for what data, are you looking for just like what's your report on vacancy, what's your report on like local workforce, that kind of information?
Yeah, like how many affordable units do we actually have? And of course, we all know that everybody has a different idea of what affordable is, and there's different definitions by the federal government as to what affordability is. So, you know, how many units do we currently have? Are there any more projected in the near future, which I don't think there are, but, you know, just what's the average rent in Quispamsis,
Sure.
you know?
Yeah.
Is it something that's reachable for a family or two that, you know, that
Yeah.
perhaps work in the hospitality sector or something like that?
The affordable units piece, so we would only know how many subsidized units exist. We wouldn't know in terms of, you know, because affordable right now is subjective. What we're attempting to do through this action strategy is create a definition of what affordable means to the town of Quispamsis, which is, you know, in line with the federal definition, but is also tailor-made to the folks that live here and the folks that you want to attract to live here. So that is presented through the data, and like we've come up with that definition through the data that we've explored through the strategy. So vacancy rate, yes, achievable. Subsidized units would be it. In terms of foreseeable subsidized units, not sure, because it's we could get information from the province, but it's a little bit,
Goal setting would come in.
yes.
Yeah,
But
okay.
in terms of affordable units, right now we're looking at like, these are targets that you should be setting through this process. Like how many affordable units, like what is the definition and what is the target? That's something that we'll be exploring with council over the next couple of months.
Okay, thank you. I won't.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Scryer. Councillor Olson, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the presentation and update. Oh, boy. Now my computer has just crashed on me. It shuts down every minute and a half unless you activate it. Drives me crazy. Can I see yours? What I wanted to do is ask if I could get some clarification from you on just what you mean in the last presentation. Just what is your definition of long-term? I'm looking at it in the same draft municipal plan in the fall of 2024, okay? Then you've got the draft zoning bylaw in the winter of 2025, round two engagement winter of 2025, and then you fall back to legislative approvals in the spring of 2025. So is the winter of 2025 in the spring and fall, or is it in the fall? What do you mean
So you're
by
doing,
winter?
so the municipal plan drafted in the fall of 2024, so this coming fall, is the work will be undertaken. The draft zoning bylaw, as well as the round 2 engagement over the winter of 2025. And then legislative approvals, meaning we come here and you kick off that process in spring. So in terms of, maybe I don't think I'm quite understanding your question.
No, I'm just trying,
January, February, March,
yeah.
April, May, June.
yeah.
Yeah, so January, February, March being kind of that 3-month segment, that 3-month kind of,
So the drafting
Extension.
drafting the zoning bylaw and the round 2 engagement takes place in winter 2025, which is actually January, February, March
Yes.
of next year.
yes,
Okay, because I was trying to differentiate between the spring of
right,
2025.
okay.
Okay.
My mistake. So we're looking, like, we'd really like you to be looking at a final document and preparing the public for the adoption process, April, May of 2025.
Yeah.
Processes like this take anywhere from 18 months to 2 years because of all the back and forth with the public.
Yeah.
And so what we're presenting here is the ideal timeline if the wheels stay on,
Okay.
you know?
Okay, well, it's just, what was confusing me was the fall,
Sure.
winter, and then spring.
I understand,
So-
yes.
Okay.
It's been a bit of a long day for me, as I'm sure it's been for you, so communications become a challenge after
No,
7
that's
o'clock.
fine.
Thank
No,
you, Councillor Olson. Councillor Donovan, please.
Sorry. I will say I find this kind of interesting. If there's anybody that knows anything about housing in Quispamsis or the lack thereof, it's me. I've recently switched residences in the town, and when I was on the hunt for somewhere to live, I had 3 options. So my 3 options were a $300,000+ house, to share a room with somebody for probably $900, or a $1,900 apartment. So those are my 3 options. Luckily, I got a 4th option, which was fantastic. But obviously, not everybody is so lucky. That's part of the reason I've been so interested in joining the housing committee that we've created here, is because, seeing it firsthand, the lack of, affordability, and it's not even just affordability. If you can afford most of these places, there's lots of people that can. There's just nowhere for people to go. We don't really have any new apartment buildings. There are some popping up here and there, but I do find it very interesting, the work that you're doing, and I do commend you, and I'm looking forward to working with you to make sure that people don't end up in the situation that I was in. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Donovan. On the question, it's been moved by Councillor Bigger, seconded by Deputy Mayor Scryer. One last question, Councillor Bigger.
Yeah, thank you. Just one, appreciate the indulgence. Just to build on what Councillor Donovan had said, about people having nowhere to go, and just consider that based on the deficit kind of, or the population growth formulae that have been laid out by you folks, over the next 20 to 25 years at medium growth rate, we're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 9,000 people moving into this community. And it's a dire situation to consider when we imagine what our housing stock is currently and what that deficit will result if not dealt with appropriately. So it is certainly an urgent situation, so we're eager to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. It's been moved by Councillor Bigger, seconded by Deputy Mayor Scryer. On the question, please vote now. Who do you need? Councillor Bigger? Affirmative? There we go. Motion carried 5-0. Motion carried unanimously. Jennifer Brown, Stephen Stone of Dillon Consulting, thank you very much for your time this evening. Item C, Kennebecasis Trail Association presentation by Shady Grove Trails. Purpose, mission, and goals, Carrie Wilson, President, and Jason Limgali, I don't know if I said that right, Vice President in attendance. Welcome. Okay.
I'm a rookie at this, so bear with me. I didn't bring a hard copy, and I recognized when this was going to make things awkward for me, and my vision probably not great, so I'll stick to, we've got it here on Carolyn's phone. So the objective here tonight, to let you know what we're all about, a little bit about our governance, our goals, a little bit on our financial and funding, and then the ridership that currently, number of folks that use the trail system today, and to look for support as we go forward on some of our goals that we're looking to achieve from council.
Thank you. And the presentation is 10 minutes.
Okay. So, whoops, okay. So the first slide basically just shows the trail system that exists. There are 24 trails, 16 kilometers we currently maintain. We are looking to add more trails to that. So next slide. Kennebecasis Trail Association was formed in 2021 to encourage, conduct, and promote safe recreational non-motorized outdoor activity inclusive to outdoor enthusiasts, mountain biking, hiking, trail running, winter fat biking, and winter snowshoeing. Our mission is to promote and encourage the responsible use of non-motorized multi-use trails and their benefits to mental and physical health within our community. The KTA is registered non-for-profit by volunteers and funded through donations and fundraising events. Next slide. So in March, we brought on new board members, including myself. So I'm also a rookie at this, but also a rookie at being the president of this particular association. So myself, I'm president. Vice president is Jason Lemongelli, who's a vice president with J.D. Irving. Treasurer, Carolyn, who's accountant with J.D. Irving. And Secretary, John Russell, who is in woodland sales with J.D. Irving. Then we have trail maintenance and communication coordinator, which is Matthew Trivet. And Matthew and his brother Will Trivet were the ones that got this whole thing started a few years ago, and I'd like to recognize the work they've done to develop the trails. And you'll see later in the ridership, the number of riders that have been increased over the last few years as we've done work, or they've done work there to get things started. So members at large are Will Trivet, one of the brothers that started things, Jay Lamb, and April Gleaton. Our goal is to create a premium destination for outdoor enthusiasts that will attract users of all skill levels from across the region. The next slide is a little bit on our governance. So I won't go into all the wording here, but basically we've got three main pillars, which is develop and build. So we would like to go from 16 kilometers that we currently have to 30 over the next few years. To maintain, maintain existing trails and maintain the standards of the trail system. To promote the trail network through various channels, social branding, events, and collaboration with engagement, local business, sponsorship, and promotional events. Promotional events, we're looking maybe next year to have like a dirt fondo where riders can, through Velo New Brunswick, can participate in an event at Shady Grove, which will bring us some more recognition for the trail system that has been developed. And so through that, we operate a well-organized and transparent manner consistent with the bylaws while respecting landowner rights and engaging with landowners on a regular basis. So the land that's used, a lot of the land that's used is privately owned land, and we have land use agreements for those parcels of land. Financial capacity, ensure KTA has the financial capacity to support the strategic objectives, including the development plan, maintenance, and accessibility initiatives, and promotional activities while remaining compliant with nonprofit status. Short-term goals, we're looking to install more improved signage. We currently have good signage throughout the trail system for somebody who goes back there. And then when I reflected to the map, I wasn't able to add this to the presentation because we just got it up, but this is our trailhead sign that has the map and a memo board and stuff. We were initially working with Dana to possibly install in the parking lot, but we've gotten approval to put it on the J.D. Irving property for now. Longer term, if a land use agreement gets in place between Quispam and Irving Oil, then we would look to relocate it out in the parking lot because that's where folks typically park to go in. And ideally, we'd like the sign to be there, trailhead sign to be there. But for now, we wanted a presence and let folks know, be able to show them the trail system through the signage. So the trailhead sign will include maps and difficulty ratings, contact information for the KTA, trail conditions, a lost and found box, warnings and disclaimers, as well as a QR code for donations. So we've got a program set up where you can donate to us through Trail Forks. As I mentioned, the land use agreement, if we get that in place, then we'll move it to the parking lot. Improve signage on the trail network, including trail maps and emergency muster points. So we would like to, in time, add more signage, and we've started developing an emergency action for if there was someone get hurt, that we can get them to a muster point and get things looked after. We also would like to purchase traffic trail counters. Right now, I have the data I'm going to share with you tonight comes from Trail Forks. It's all just mountain bikers. But New Brunswick hiking uses the trails. The trail runners also run there. So there's a lot more usage than what we show on the Trail Forks data. And so there are these counters, you can mount them in the tree, and then you be able to pick up any hikers, anybody that uses the trail system. Third item on our short-term goals is to add additional 1.1 kilometers of trail. We have government funding in place for that from the province, and looking to put a shovel in the ground possibly later this fall. Long-term goals, as I mentioned, add at least another 17 kilometers of trail, continue to expand Shady Grove Trail Network, connect eventually, long-term, thinking about, if we could connect to the Wells Trail system, that would be ideal. And that would put us pretty close to 30 kilometers of total trail. We require, obviously, some funding to do that, and we need land use agreements with some private landowners, but Quispam owed some land on the back side of that as well, and then we're into Lot Rosse. Improved funding model. We want to improve the ease for users to make donations, and we've started some of that with, I mentioned, the QR code for being able to make donations. And in addition to that, we want to get around to the local bike shops and the local breweries and engage with them to do more promotional stuff and as part of our fundraising. In addition to that, engage further with the provincial government, municipal funding through your community grant fund, and to further fund the initiatives. And then I'll just turn it over to Carolyn in terms of the finance.
I'll just keep it super short and say that for this year, we do have a little bit of a shortfall so far, but the things that Carrie mentioned would help us overcome that. But we do have a lot of provincial funding already determined. We've put in the request to the town for some help. We are working on the business sponsorship structure, getting the Trail Forks public donations, the Karma, like small individual donations, and we have some interest from private donors as well that are helping us out. And
Yeah, so we do have plans in place to get, to achieve our 1 kilometer of trail to be built this year.
All right, okay, keep it quick. So I'll as Carolyn talked about the funding options, I'll just scroll through quickly and get to the trail usage. So you'll see in 2024, currently, and this report I just ran here in July. So in 2024, our riders, our current is 871. So, you know, if we continue on this path, we'll exceed 2023 in terms of number of riders. And that's just folks that have Trailforks or use Strava or Garmin. So those are apps that folks use to track the ride. And my belief is that only probably picks up 50% of the total ridership that exists out there. But it's at least it's data I could present to you. And what isn't in that is hikers, trail runners, you know, snowshoers. I believe the number to be significantly more. And if you scroll to the next, that was on June 8th in the parking lot, both parking lots, the large parking lot and then the smaller one that's back near the park. That's a Wednesday night. The parking lot's full. When I was putting the trailhead sign up, there was like 30 trail runners that night who gave me a round of applause for putting the trailhead sign up, which was awful nice. But, you know, there are times when you're doing something like this, donating your time, and you can feel like you're pushing a rock up a hill. I go there on a Wednesday night and I feel good about the fact that we're doing something good here, and people from the community are utilizing it, and it promotes good health in the community, mental and physical health. So that's kind of what keeps me energized. So support from local council. We've applied for community grant funding, and the breakdown, we're looking for $5,200, and the breakdown is basically for trail maintenance and hand tools, as well as the traffic's trail counters that I talked about that we'd like to install. And that data will be very helpful as we go forward to provincial, yourselves, and federal looking for funding. A land use agreement with the KTA in place once Quispam has a land use agreement with Irving Oil. Should that come into place, and then that would enable us to have some further discussions around, is there things we could do in the parking lot with like possibly portable washrooms, more for a lot of times for female riders, you know, and also snow removal in the winter time and stuff. Okay, good. I'll make it lots. Okay. Ongoing annual funding to continue trail development and assistance with achieving our long-term goal, which would be to link the trail system with Wells, which, as I say, there's some more property on the backside owned by Quispam. And that's my rant.
Thank you very much, Carrie and Carolyn, for your presentation this evening. And certainly I've used that trail many a time. And
oh, great.
It's good to have signage because I get lost easily. So.
Me too.
Yeah, I'll bet. So I'm going to open up the floor to council. Councillor Luck.
Thank you, Your Worship. Perhaps I'll make a motion and then I have a comment. So I'll make the motion that Carrie Wilson and Caroline Preble from the Kennebecasis Trail Association be thanked for their presentation.
It's been moved by Councillor Luck, seconded by Deputy Mayor Schreier. On the question, go ahead, Councillor Luck.
Thank you. I first wanted to thank you for coming, and a big thank you to all the volunteers. I know it's a volunteer organization, and for any councillor that hasn't been to Shady Grove, I really encourage you to grab a walking stick or a bike because it's a very magical place. So really want to thank you for coming, as well as all the volunteers that put hours and hours of their dedicated time to building such an amazing infrastructure there. I mean, I know it's very highly used. Just a few comments. You had mentioned that, you know, your long-term goals is for it to connect to Rossay. I'm not sure if you're planning on doing a similar presentation to the Rossay.
I'd like to. This is my inaugural.
Okay.
Get in front of a council, and then yes, we'd like to longer term get in front of Rossay and have the same presentation.
Okay, that would be, I mean, that would be great, because again, I know it's located in Quispamsis, but it is Kennebecasis Trail Association, and I know a lot of people from Ross also benefit from those trails as well. And then I guess another comment is, I know we were at a municipal conference last year, and actually the Department of Tourism, I'm just kind of sharing this with you, but I know that they were doing some work with trails, so that might be another angle in terms of looking for support with government. It's the department, which kind of doesn't really, I wouldn't guess Department of Tourism right off the bat, but it was the Department of Tourism that was working with some trails.
Okay.
So it might be something you want to explore.
great.
And I guess my last question is more directed to our Director of Community Services, and I guess linking to one of your comments about perhaps future partnerships in terms of like even getting, you know, a washroom. And I know that there's land use agreements and it's not our land. So I'm just wondering if the Director of Community Services could speak a little bit to kind of that part in terms of, is there potential down the road? Because I know a lot of Quispamsis residents use that trail because it's kind of a different type of trail than like our groomed trails and for our Q-Plex trails. But in terms of having some type of partnership to kind of support like porta potties in the summer and things like that, is that a possibility in the future?
Your worship, through you to Councillor Luck, that would certainly be up to council to make that determination if you'd like to provide that level of service. I think the first hurdle, as Carrie mentioned, is the land use agreement, which we do not have. So that would be the first thing that we would need to put in place. And again, if it's up to council to determine that level of service for the facility. We do not provide that level of service for facilities that we don't own. So that would change the expectation for other user groups as well. So that's something we have to bear in mind. But
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Burton-Dixon, did you have
No,
a
that's fine.
follow-up?
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Scryer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the presentation. I recognize some of those JDI names. So my question is about the parking lot. So I'm not completely clear on, we own the parking lot, is that correct? No, okay, so that's, I just want to get clear on this land use agreement as to, I know you go past the trailer park and it's on our right-hand side. So who owns the parking lot?
We own Irving Oil.
Irving Oil owns the whole thing?
Yep. And
The parking lot, that's what I
so-
mean. They own that parking lot.
Yeah. It's my understanding at one time that was a gas station convenience store. Yeah, listen,
Years and years. Okay.
Well, yes, I've moved here in 2008, so I
Okay.
don't have the lore.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to be very clear on who owns this parking lot. So it's not a town, nothing to do with the town at all as far as the ownership. Okay. So I wanted to make that clearer. And I wanted to just make a comment that, of course, the application to funding will go to the Finance Committee. And so we'll be dealing with things like that in September, October. So the actual land that the trails are on, who owns that land?
There's 10 landowners, and
You don't have to name, so it's
there's 10
multiple?
parcels of land, and we have land use agreements in place for all but 2 that we've got verbal agreements from them. We just haven't been able to get them to finalize and sign off on the land use agreement. But one particular parcel, it's where the trail first starts and goes through the first field. There's like a double trail there that the ATV riders use as well, and that's one of them. And so the other one actually doesn't. We don't have trails on it, but we're very close to the property, so we had looked to get a land use agreement in place for that, because we may potentially down the road look to expand that way a little bit.
Okay, and my last question, Your Worship, does any of that land border the highway or a road besides Parkside? Does any of that land, to your knowledge, border no?
No. The only, like I say, there's an ATV trail, a wide road
So the only access to the trails is through that parking lot? You can't get to the...
Yeah, from the
it's-
parking lot, there's a private road.
Yeah.
And you go into a field and from there you're into the trail system.
Okay, thank you.
And just for background on the land use agreement with Irving Oil, we originally did approach them. They directed us to, and that's when I reached out to you, Dana, was, and as I say, right now, as we understand it, that Irving Oil hasn't signed over a land use agreement to Quispam yet. But when we approached them, not being aware that Quispam had approached them, we were looking to get a land use agreement in place just to put our trailhead sign up. And they indicated that at the time to contact council.
So I'm not sure why contact council, because we don't own any of the land or the parking lot.
Because there was a potential land use, the council was looking to possibly get a land use agreement. That's my
Okay.
understanding.
Is that correct?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And I don't know that this has actually come before staff at this point to that depth.
Yep.
And I know I don't want to ask Ms. Burton-Dixon to mention, I guess Mr. Kennedy, our acting CAO, has the comment.
Thank you, Your Worship. And as council is aware, we generally don't talk about land deals that are going on behind the scenes. It's okay for you to do that as a proponent here, but it's probably best if we bring that to council's attention at a more appropriate time. No, it's certainly okay, but just, we're not going to talk about it. You can talk about it, but we're not going to talk about it.
No, that's quite right.
So thank you for your presentation, Carrie and Carolyn. On the question, seeing there are none, please vote now. Yes. Motion carried 6-0. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Item number 5D, New Brunswick Medical Education Foundation presentation, remission goals and successes and healthcare in New Brunswick. And this evening we have Alyssa Long, Executive Director, and David Ryan, Fundraising Manager, in attendance. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you so much, Your Worship, councillors, Deputy Mayor. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come in and share a little bit about our story as the only registered charity, not only in New Brunswick, but in all of Canada, that is dedicated to securing doctors for New Brunswick. I'm here tonight because in addition to fundraising, which is of course something we do, we believe in friend-raising. And part of that in building relationships is telling the story, helping raise awareness of not only our mission, but the students that we've helped and the physicians we've brought to New Brunswick communities. And of course, the people within those communities are benefiting every day from the services those physicians provide. So that's the agenda for today. I know I have 10 minutes, so I'll be as quick as I can possibly be. So a little bit about our organization. We were founded in 2010 by physicians who were quickly approaching retirement age. And as they were coming into work every day, they became increasingly concerned about orphaning their patients once they decided to move into their next phase of their careers. They didn't see young physicians coming into their communities, and so at that point, Dr. Donald Craig actually approached Dalhousie Medicine New Brunswick and said, instead of spending all of this time and all of these resources recruiting physicians from out of province or out of municipalities to come in and establish their careers here, why do we not instead engage medical students who are studying within New Brunswick and get them to commit to coming back to communities like Quispamsis once qualified? So thus, the Return to Service Scholarship Model was born, targeting medical students, providing them with tuition relief. In exchange, those medical students come and practice within, again, communities like Quispamsis. And what we've seen in those 14 or 15 years since inception have been remarkable results that prove that this program and this model work. They are the most cost-effective, high-yield physician recruitment models that this province has ever seen. So I'm excited to share a little bit about that. However, before I get to results, I want to talk about the need, because as you're all aware, it is very rare to see a good news story in the healthcare sector. We know that our province, all communities across our province, are facing a dire critical shortage in healthcare staffing. We are seeing an aging physician population, a growing citizen population, and again, not as many young incoming professionals as is needed. Also, healthcare is getting more and more complex. Physicians aren't able to come in and take on the patient load that physicians 20, 30, or 40 years ago were doing. There are just too many referrals, too many complications. Each patient's case is taking more and more time. So the current state of the province, there are more than 80,000 New Brunswickers currently on the wait list for a family doctor or nurse practitioner. That number is expected to surpass 100,000 by the end of this calendar year. Our average physician across the province is 49.2 years old. So as we can see, within 10 to 15 years, we are going to face a mass exodus. And with communities like Quispamsis growing by up to 9,000 people in the coming years, we're going to see the strain on our healthcare system within this community, but also at the regional level with the hospitals and secondary care services. We know that there are over 300 current vacancies within the health networks within the province, both at Horizon Health and Vitalite. And what we've seen is that past efforts to address the physician staffing shortage have been siloed, often very high at cost, and the results have been varied. If we could advance to the next slide, please. So what we've seen is that the numbers historically within this healthcare zone, Quispamsis, St. John, the Fundy Shore region, have been very good. Roughly 86% of the population have access to a family physician or nurse practitioner today. But while access to care is important, what we've seen is timely access to care is not possible in this region. The numbers have dropped to just 33% of citizens here can access their care provider within 5 days should they have a health emergency. And that's something that we are looking to change, and having access to more doctors, more support services is going to help us do that. What we've seen as well is that those racialized communities, people living in poverty, newcomers to Canada, are also facing additional barriers to care, and that's across the province, not just in Quispamsis, but it is something we see here as well, and something that we are aware of and hoping to change. If we could advance. So again, before I get to the results, just to highlight the model one more time, it's simple yet effective. We raise funds as a charity to provide return to service scholarships to medical students and nurse practitioner students. We pay tuition expenses only. Those students pledge to return to communities within New Brunswick, and thus we see that return to service scholarship model. Once they finish their residency placements, they have 1 year to return to the province, establish their careers here to start fulfilling their pledge. Usually it is 1 year of service per each year of funding received. We could advance. So like I said, the numbers are great and really encouraging. Since inception, we have supported over 300 medical students. Last year, we awarded 130 scholarships to those students, securing 130 pledged years of service. This year, we're awarding nearly 150 scholarships, 149 to be exact. So we've grown significantly in just 1 year. We now have 51 graduate physicians practicing across New Brunswick in every health zone in both language systems. But what's more, and these numbers are actually out of date, we now have more than 220 medical students and residents in our pipeline who have pledged to return here once qualified. So that's extraordinary, and what's really interesting is that pipeline alone accounts for 46% of the projected provincial need by 2030. And we're just getting started. If we could advance. So our student data, each year we see more and more applications, but last year we saw a jump unlike we've ever seen before. Applications rose by 58%. They were up another 9% this year. We know that the barriers students face to medical education, the financial barriers in particular, are staggering. They're often graduating with over $100,000 in debt. We have one aspiring student who is just in his second year who's currently carrying a debt load of over $110,000. So it's significant. The difference that we are able to make through these scholarships is immense. It relieves the burden, and the cost of living is increasing, as is tuition. So the need for these scholarships is dire. What we also see is that we have the capacity last year to support 68% of eligible applicants for these awards. This year, that number rose to 75%. Of the 6 students from Quispamsis who applied for funding this year, we were able to support 5 of them. So that's extraordinary, and we know that the students who are in our programs report that they want to return to their home communities. So these are 5 potential Quispamsis physicians who are likely to return here. And then what we also see, the diversity of the students we support is fantastic. We support students now from 47 different communities in New Brunswick. 64% are bilingual, 44% are from historically marginalized or underserviced groups. You could advance. And then when we look at the regional impact, this slide says St. John, but I have the Quispamsis numbers too. Within St. John, we have 12 program alumni practicing. We have 2 program alumni who have their practices within Quispamsis, another 4 who are within Rothsay. What we see actually is a number of the physicians who are working in St. John actually live in Quispamsis. So they are here, they are using Quispamsis services, they have real estate here. So they're also supporting this community and its economy as well. And then, like I had mentioned, we did receive 6 applications from students who are from Quispamsis. This is their hometown. They are studying at Dalhousie Medicine, New Brunswick. We were able to support 5. Our hope is that we can add an additional few scholarships next year, be able to support every one of those eligible applicants going forward. If we could advance. As we know, it's not just healthcare that services bring to communities. There are key economic drivers to having a physician in a community. Municipal taxes, approximately $13,000 per year. Induced household spending of approximately $120,000 per year. There are economic benefits to bringing a physician's office to a community, so there's a clear return on investment. We commissioned an economic impact report last year that actually illustrates this. I would be happy to share that with council should anyone have a desire to see it. We could advance. And then aside from the numbers, which I'm a firm believer in quantitative data, however, there's also a qualitative impact to the work we do. As an organization, we support succession planning. Physicians approaching retirement age have come to us and said, who in your pipeline might be studying family medicine? Who may be planning to return to my community? Who can I talk to? We have a network of students and alumni we can put that ask out to and connect physicians, again, who are approaching retirement and looking after their patients, worried about their patients' future, and find people who may be interested in practice sharing or succession planning. And then the big picture, of course, why bring physicians to communities? They allow families access to primary care and peace of mind. We know that employers stand a better chance of growing their workforces when there is reliable, timely, quality access to care within communities. We can ease the strain, of course, on our secondary healthcare systems, after-hours clinics, emergency rooms, which are not equipped to deal with the volume they are seeing today. And then finally, we know that our province is better positioned for growth, whether it's from a healthcare perspective, quality of life, socially, or economically, or generationally. There are some key benefits here. So in conclusion, the work that we're doing to secure doctors for New Brunswick, it is a proven solution. And how can communities like Quispamsis become involved? The biggest thing, it's awareness. Knowing that should you find your community in need of a physician, there is a model here that helps. Also, we are proactive. So we engage these students at a point when they're not talking to employers. We engage them as they first begin their medical careers. So having that commitment to a community helps them envision a future. They form relationships here. They set down roots here in Quispamsis. So that's an option for you to invest in a medical education scholarship should you find there's a need. However, you also have recipients and alumni from this community, so we can help introduce you to them. We can help integrate them into the community. And then, of course, we can celebrate their achievements at our annual scholarship celebration, which will be taking place on Tuesday, October 15th at the Delta in St. John. So every counselor will, of course, be receiving an invitation to that. We would welcome you to come attend and meet some of those recipients, particularly those from your community or returning to your community. And that's, I know I'm out of time, so I'd be happy to take any questions going forward.
Well, thank you very much, Alyssa. That was a wonderful presentation, and you're certainly well-versed and deliver wonderfully. So thank you for that. And I will open the floor to council. And certainly we do love to see our young people stay in our community. And I know CBC had this type of discussion a number of years ago. And the big factors for graduating doctors to return to their community was for family and friends. And that's what we would like to see. So I will turn this over to Councillor Olson.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks so much for your presentation. Personally, this is one of the charities that I call it a charity. I don't know if it's a charity or not, but I support annually. And I'm very proud to do that because as a council, we've discussed this in the past. and even investigated trying to bring a doctor to our community. So I'm interested really in knowing how these doctors are protected. I see that the city of Dieppe has made an arrangement with the doctor coming back to that community. So I'd be interested in knowing how you cost it. What is the agreements that you have to enter into and what have you. And I'm not saying that that's the form that you have to discuss right now, but I'm going to make a motion a little bit later on after other people had a chance to talk, just to, what's that? You can do that now. Oh, yeah, okay, well, I'd like to move that this be referred to our finance committee and staff for consideration through the budget process to identify the pros and cons. There's always cons, I guess, and everything, money-wise, but just how it operates and how we could participate and the length of time, all the details associated with it. So that'd be my motion, Your Worship.
So it's been moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Scryer on the question. Is there anyone else? Deputy Mayor Scryer.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the presentation. It was great. And you got a lot in a short period of time, so you know your stuff.
Thank you.
I remember when this started, and it was quite an initiative to get it off the ground. And there's a lot of people involved. And I'm just wondering, so if you're not on the scholarship, if you're not successful with getting a scholarship, how do you tap into those students that, if I forget the number that you told me you gave out last year, how do you tap into the students that are actually in Dow, in New Brunswick, and getting them home? Is there like a connection between you and the recruitment team?
Absolutely. And in particular, in the last 2 years, we have fostered very strong, very positive relationships with the Department of Health and the regional health networks across New Brunswick. So they are actually now they participate in our alumni committee. So they now have a vantage point to see who's in our pipeline, who may we have not been able to successfully fund. But what we see when we look at retention results and the recruitment results is if a medical student is trained outside the province, they have a 40% likelihood to come back to the province. If they are trained within New Brunswick at either CFMNB or DMNB, they have a 60% likelihood. But if they receive funding through our program, 75% retention rate. So we see a huge jump. So actually our goal, and David's goal in particular, my colleague, we want to grow the foundation to a point where we can support 100% of the eligible applicants that come through our application cycle every year. Because if we do that, we know they have the greatest possible chance of coming back. They have a financial incentive to do so. And they become part of our network and our alumni so that they have a network of peer support, because it goes beyond just engaging with our staff. We try to foster connections between these students, introduce them, help bring or hold events where they can come together. And when we look at engaging the students who are not successful, all of our webinars, all of our open houses, our events are open to those students who are not receiving financial support as well.
Just one final question is, the nurse practitioners, when you give those figures, that includes physicians and nurse practitioners. So what percentage would be roughly the nurse practitioners would represent out of those numbers? And I know they've probably just been added I don't know, the last 5 years or so. I don't know.
This fall marks the first year we've actually been awarding scholarships to nurse practitioners. It's something we're very excited about.
I think it's a great step.
So what we've seen is the vast majority of our awards are designated funds. They are designated for medical students, but we do now have 3 individual scholarships that are designated that they do include nurse practitioners as being eligible recipients. So I'm sure that number will grow in the coming years.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. On the question, please vote now. The motion was made by Councillor Olson and seconded by Deputy Mayor Scryer. Motion carried. Thank you very much. Have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you, counselors. Have a good evening.
Item number 6 is public hearings, and there are none. Item number 7 is minutes of the previous meeting, July 16th, 2024. Moved by Councillor Donovan, seconded by Councillor Thompson on the question. Please vote now. Donovan, Councillor Donovan, and Councillor Thompson. First Donovan and then Thompson. Motion carried. Item.
Item 5D, the New Brunswick Medical Association, Foundation rather, we had a motion printed on our package that we didn't address, right? So I know Councillor Olson offered his sort of adjunct motion, but do we not, just as a matter of procedure, I just wanted to point out we didn't address that, and unfortunately I was going to ask them a question about the correlation between the bursary established by Envision and sort of to what degree there's competition there as we consider our involvement, given that we fund Envision in part now, and this program exists with that. But in any case, I know they've exited now, but I just wondered, was that motion struck in deference to Councillor Olson's?
The motion wasn't read, so it was a thank you, whereas this was an action for staff to take.
So I see a motion here that
Yes.
has had no action attached to it.
Go ahead.
Oh, excuse me, I see, no one moved that. Okay, pardon me. Okay, thank you.
No, I'll go ahead. That particular motion was a proposed motion, just inserted as there was no proposed motion in the presentation.
Thank you.
I guess I would just point out that as we consider our involvement with this program, excellent though it may be, I played a fundraising concert for this organization some years ago. I certainly think it's excellent. The numbers bear it out that it's being very successful, but I would just bear that in mind that I would just add that now after the fact that we do also fund Envision that has established a bursary for Dalhousie Medical as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Moving on. That motion has already been carried out, so if anyone has anything further to say on that, I see two lights going, so Councillor Donovan, are you speaking to the previous motion? And Councillor Olson, were you going to speak to the previous?
Yes, just a point of clarification. Your worship, just to let it be known that we don't have to use a motion written here as a suggestion. We can supersede it with a motion of our own, like you said, with action. And if somebody wants to comment on that, then they answer on the question of that particular motion.
Thank you. Councillor Donovan.
I was just gonna move the special meeting. I don't know if we had to do that. There's a regular meeting and special meeting.
Special meeting of July 18th, 2024. Moved by.
I do apologize. We did approve both of them in that it was read as one in the motion that Councillor Thompson and I just moved and seconded.
16th and the 18th.
Yeah, so it's okay. We can move on.
Just one motion on that? Okay. Item number 8, unfinished business. Proposed council maternity parental leave policy. Correspondence from Deputy Mayor Scryer.
Yes, Your Worship, thank you very much. And I would like to thank staff for working on this policy to make it very clear as to potential candidates coming in future elections, that we do have a policy on parental leave, and I believe it's I think it was mentioned earlier tonight about having policies and things written down so that people know exactly. It's very clear and transparent as to what our policy is now. It is without having to go through council, respecting the privacy of the counselors or counselor, whoever that might be. And I think it also gives us a real sense of inclusive and equity, equality for persons looking to enter into politics at the grassroots. That's what we are, grassroots level. And I believe that this policy will give us the opportunity and help people navigate. But political life isn't always the easiest, so anything we can do to help a member through the welcoming of a child, whether it be by birth or by adopting, I believe that we're being progressive, and I'd like to thank council very much for their attention to this, and I believe it's the right thing to do, and setting us, as we always are, a progressive town. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Scryer.
So I would move that. Move. Council adopt the parental leave policy as presented.
Thank you. It's been moved by Deputy Mayor Scryer, seconded by Councillor Olson. On the question, Councillor Donovan.
Thank you. I'm honored to have the opportunity today to vote in favor of this parental leave policy. When I ran for council, I had many goals in mind, but finding ways for young people to get involved has always been really close to my heart. I'm 25, and I know that many of my friends are starting to create families of their own. It's often touted that we need new ideas and fresh faces, but how do we expect to achieve these things with such obvious barriers? This policy will begin to dismantle some of the barriers for women and men who want to get into politics, but don't want to sacrifice starting a family. Quispamsis is known for being an inclusive, vibrant, and family-friendly community, and the moves we make as a council are often watched closely by many. I think it's only fitting that we be the first municipality in New Brunswick to adopt a parental policy, and I'm very proud to lend my support to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bigger, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a couple of questions based on the staff report supplied by our acting CAO. I note that at the bottom of the first page, it references that discussions had been had with the provincial government and the town solicitor. The determination was made that a town policy would be the preferred option over a change to the remuneration bylaw, and says that since debate around the 10 consecutive meetings was deemed to be half of the 20 regularly scheduled meetings each year, it was felt that 6 months would be more equitable than 10 meetings, in keeping with the spirit of the motion, which would excuse a council member from missing half a, and then I have a note over it. I can't see what that word says. What? Oh, half a year, thank you. I've ill-placed my note here. I support the spirit of trying to reduce any barrier that we can identify that exists that might discourage anyone, for that matter, of good conscience and character who wants to jump in and serve publicly. We know that the statistics and the numbers indicate that people are doing it less and less. And it's a challenge to find good candidates sometimes. And so I certainly can applaud the effort sort of in that regard. I have a couple of concerns about, I guess, about the specifics of this, but not, I just want to be clear, I have no real issue with the notion of wanting to remove a barrier related to someone who's a new parent and wanting to, be involved in public service at our municipal meetings. The Local Governance Act repealed the limitation on participation through electronic means in 2021, and that has not, perhaps that was in relation to COVID at the time, but that's never been reinstated. So as it stands currently, I believe that unless council was to deem otherwise, a person can, by virtue of personal situations, vacation even for that matter, I suppose, but still wanting to be involved. If a person was on a personal trip for whatever reason, they can be involved by participating electronically. It seems to me that we have a sturdy kind of capacity for people to avail themselves of being part of the process, even if they can't be right in the room every bi-weekly or perhaps monthly if it's summertime, as we're just finishing out our summer schedule here. And I just don't know if this is not a solution in search of a problem a little bit. We have no statistics or information to indicate that anybody is unwilling to offer themselves as a candidate on the basis of the absence of a policy like this. That's not a reason necessarily to not do something. I understand that. There are two ways to look at that, I guess. Perhaps the thing that I'm most concerned about is the idea that we create basically a block policy of 6 months where we would continue to pay. I noticed that down at the bottom of the report it says financial implications none. Well, except that we pay somebody to not be part of the council for 6 months. And so there is a financial implication, right? And that person can't be part of our adjudication or helping us ruminate and process and determine and decide issues that are in front of us. So I wouldn't say that there's no financial implication. Perhaps I'm on an island here, and the vote will tell the truth. But I just need to kind of voice my feelings on this. I think that we have a policy that allows for people to ask of council for a variance beyond what our current policy allows for in terms of absences. And it seems to me that that works very well. And I mean, it's not like we're not like overlords, waiting for someone to come in hat in hand, meek and meager and afraid to ask for what they need. This is certainly, we can be very involved. There's a lot of committee work. There's lots to be done. But this is not like showing up at the office every single day. I just question the instituting of a policy that is specific to this issue. And I wonder if that leads to other policies being established and sets a precedent of sorts. So perhaps I'll just leave it at that. I guess I've probably made my point. I wonder if the reason this policy doesn't exist elsewhere is because the same sentiment exists elsewhere. Nobody can really say for sure, I guess, but we don't have any evidence of people being disallowed the variance they might need in terms of absences from the council meetings beyond what their policies respectively would allow for on the basis of being a new parent, for example. So I'll just leave it at that. But as it stands currently, I would prefer at the very least that we lessen the amount of time that a person would be off on a leave like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Mr. Kennedy, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. There was a lot to unpack there. I'll try to go off the top of my head. The first one being the electronic meetings. And the Local Governance Act did indeed change a couple of years ago, and they put that to individual councils of the various municipalities in the province to create their own rules around attendance electronically. And this council in the recently amended and approved procedural bylaw opted for 5. So that there certainly is a limitation there that someone just couldn't decide to not come to any council meetings in person and attend them all throughout the calendar year virtually. In terms of the financial impact and how I put in the staff report that there's none, I would equate that to when council members don't attend a meeting for whatever reason, they're not docked their pay. It's budgeted council members, and your worship, you receive your salary, and that's your salary. So it's not as if there would be any additional cost if someone were not to come to a council meeting when they were on a parental leave. The genesis of this, I guess, from when the deputy mayor brought it forward and just some of the research that we had done, it became a very public discussion and debate in Nova Scotia. And it was actually the provincial government that did change their legislation around, I think their department is municipal affairs rather than local governance that it is here, to allow this to take place. And it was basically, there were a couple of young mothers, counselors in various communities too. I can't think of their names off the top of my head, or the names of those communities, but they basically had to go to council in an open session and basically talk about their personal health and their situation and ask council to afford them a leave, which doesn't seem appropriate in 2024. So rather than having someone need to come to council to say, I'm taking a parental leave, or I would like to respectfully request that I be permitted to take a parental leave, he or she basically goes to the clerk and provides that information and says, I am taking the parental leave. And the one thing that is mentioned in the staff report that I think is important, especially in this community, because of the fact that we do have some prominent joint boards and commissions with our neighbors in Rossay, that if you're planning to take the parental leave, that you have to take it for the duration. You wouldn't be able to, if there was a provocative issue or you had time or whatever that you wanted to come in because of the limitations on each municipality having X number of representatives on a particular board. If someone was appointed to that in that person's absence during the parental leave, it would become somewhat convoluted, complicated, and unmanageable, and not acceptable to have two people show up when we're only entitled to one. So we did think that that was important. But again, this was council directed us to come back with this policy. And of course, your worship, it's a decision of council whether it's implemented or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Councillor Luck, please.
Thank you, your worship. Through you to Mr. Kennedy. I just wanted, it was more of a clarifying question in terms of one of your last comments about, I'm just trying to find it here. Basically, you have to take the 6 months. Let me see, yeah, you must be willing to commit to the entire 6-month period. So I guess that is where I'm wondering if that would be a barrier. Like, so could I commit to 3 months and come back as long as whatever time period was committed to? Or are you saying that it's 6 months or nothing? Like, that was kind of my question around just clarity on that comment.
No, I think, your worship, through you to Councillor Luck, that would be fine as long as there was a defined period, simply because if the member is on one of those joint boards, it wouldn't be a big deal if that person wasn't, because then obviously we can manage our own committees on our own and have someone come in and out without any great duress, but it's those joint ones that would cause the issues. But yeah, sure, someone said, I just need 2 weeks, perhaps.
Okay.
Sure, that would be fine. I guess whether we needed to change that to up to a maximum of 6 months, that would certainly be, that would be reasonable, your worship.
Okay, I guess that would be just my to clarify with the policy, is have it written so that it's, yeah, like, and I mean, I guess the point that you were trying to prevent was people jumping in and out of maternity leave, where you're on maternity leave, and when it's over, it's over. So somehow there should be kind of like whatever that stated leave and come back time. And, again, when you're on leave, but you can't be on leave and then come back and then be on leave again. I think that's what we're all saying. But anyway, if it just could be clarified a bit, just because I think when I first read that, I thought, geez, maybe someone just needs like 3 months. And it sounded like they had to do 6 months or nothing. So I'm happy to hear theirs. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Luck. Deputy Mayor Scryer.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Councillor Luck. I would agree to that amendment or that change in the policy up to 6 months. Everybody's different in what their needs are, but knowing that you could go to 6 months is very important. And I just wanted to address the idea of virtual. And, you know, we can't assume that somebody might be up to par or wanting to attend a meeting virtually. We're not there in that home and knowing how many other children are there and the needs, and there could be colic and there could be all sorts of things going on. So virtual meetings, like, to me, that's, it's a no, not a consideration. It's either you allow the policy to stand as it is and go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mr. Kennedy, please.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And just reading the policy, again, the draft policy, I think Councillor Luck's concerns are noted in here. A parental leave permitted by this policy may not exceed 6 consecutive months or extend beyond the member's term in office. And then under notice, it says a member shall notify the clerk of their intent to take parental leave as soon as possible prior to the start of the leave. The notice shall include 1, the start date of the parental leave and the expected return date. So it would be at that point that the member who is taking his or her leave would have to use the return date. So that could be anywhere up to a day to 6 months, but it's clear in the previous item leave that it may not exceed 6 consecutive months. And obviously, if there's an election or the member resigns or whatever, leaves office for whatever reason, then it would end immediately, Your Worship.
On the question, it was moved by Deputy Mayor Scryer and seconded by, my computer just went off, Councillor Olson. Thank you. Please vote now. Motion carried 5-1. The nay vote was Councillor Bigger. Item 8B, approval to proceed. Consultants proceed to Part C -2023 TQ02-4, Quispamsis Road and Millennium Drive. Councillor Olson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Excuse me. It is recommended that Englobe Corporation be instructed to proceed to Part C of RFP 2023 TQ02-4, Engineering Services Street Infrastructure Design and Tender, Millennium Drive and Quispamsis Road for the upset fee of $84,799.85, includes HST, and the town staff be directed to meet with the consultant to continue working on the project.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Donovan. On the question, please vote now. Oh, sorry, there's a question here, Deputy Mayor.
Oh, thank you. There was somebody over my shoulder. I didn't know who it was. It's a deer. Sorry. Two deer. So my question was just about Millennium. Are we going right from the intersection to Market Street? And what's the plan for the disruption? Because that's such a busy corner. And are we putting some type of pedestrian, temporary for the pedestrians to get across the street?
Through Your Worship, we're doing the design and reviews for Millennium Drive now. We've hit a couple of snags with the design with respect to the water main location. The intended design is actually from the intersection up to the entrance to Market Street, past the Shannex, and what that would include would be a walking light, crosswalk light, similar to what we have at the Pettingill Road at the QR Trail, the type of a light so that people can cross from the Shannex over to the area. With respect to other crossings, we can't do anything on the arterial because that's designated highway. I know that the Premier had mentioned it a while back. He had been approached by some residents of the trailer park, and I guess the province was looking into it, but we don't have that particular jurisdiction. So as far as our design is concerned, we're only looking at the stretch from the intersection with the 4 lights to the Market Street entrance. As far as disruption, the basic width of the street would propose to remain the same because we're looking at increasing the right-of-way exteriors, the outside limits, that is the shoulders, to put in storm sewer AT components. So we will be working mainly on the outside edges as opposed to the middle. So we anticipate some disruption, but not total road closures. However, until we finalize design and come back with some budget numbers, we're not prepared to release that for tender at this stage of the game. And particularly with an item that we've got on the agenda a little later on here tonight, our street capital budgets are being challenged on a regular basis. So this particular Section C really will allow us to proceed with the work that's being done on the Quispamsis Road, and eventually, once we get to that tender on the Millennium Drive, when we get to that stage. But at that stage, the Millennium Drive is on hold.
Okay. So it's on hold?
Till we've reconciled some design issues and budget issues, and we can come back to council with an update.
Okay, thank you.
On the question, please vote now. Motion carried 6-0. Thank you. Item 8C, street upgrading 2024-tender 2024 TQ04-03, extra work, change order, roadbed material. Councillor Bigger.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move council amend tender number 2024 TQ04-03. Street upgrading 2024 awarded to Galbraith Construction Limited to include a change order for the reconstruction of portions of the roadbed on the Model Farm Road, and the tender value be increased by $223,668 to account for the additional work. The cost of the work on this addition will come from the unassigned street capital budget.
It's been moved by Councillor Bigger, seconded by Councillor Olson. On the question, Deputy Mayor Scryer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not 100% sure of myself here as to where the money's coming from when you say unassigned. Unassigned street capital budget.
Through Your Worship, if you will recall, when we put the tender out, the tender came in less than the budget that we had set aside for street capital, and that we were going to come back to council with additional streets that we were going to be recommending that could be paved as part of the tender package. And in doing that, we brought back the extension to the Model Farm Road, Means Cove Road, as 2 streets that we could take. That was because our tender value came in at such a good price. And now we're sitting on the additional $240,000. Once we saw where all the rest of the streets came, we would come back with 1 or 2 streets that we could pave for council, for council's consideration. Now with this is where that money is coming from. It's streets that we thought we might have been able to pave. We didn't want to spend it right up front, and this is one reason why we didn't want to spend it right up front until we saw where the $500,000 or $5 million street capital program went, because we knew there were going to be some issues pop up, and this is just an example. So that's where it's coming from. It's money that we had. It's money that came in where we came in under budget, that we were going to hopefully spend on another street, that now we have to spend on some of the streets that we're working on.
So are those streets that were actually on our capital?
These were streets that were on the Model Farm Road is the street, as the residents were here tonight, actually.
Yeah.
It's that stretch. And again, it's a function of when we build a street outside of the road width that was the DOT widths, now we're dealing with unknown materials. So now you're dealing with, when you widen a road, you're eliminating, ditch stability, things like that, but you're also dealing with road bed that you don't know what's underneath it. We did some geotechnical examination prior to, and what we found is between the test holes that we did, this is the area of unsuitable material that we're dealing with.
So how many roads got cut?
No roads got cut. We
No,
just couldn't
okay.
add any.
You couldn't
new-
add any.
New streets
Okay,
to it, Your
got
Worship.
it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Loge. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. On the question, it's been moved by Councillor Bigger, seconded by Councillor Olson. Please vote now. Motion carried 6-0. Thank you. Item number 9, correspondence. 9A, 258 Hampton Road, Pitt 251959, Elm Tree Hill, multiple residential apartment building, or apartment development, I'm sorry. Request to amend development agreement. Samantha Horner, project manager, ZAP Consulting. I don't believe she's here. Are you here to represent Ms. Horner?
Yes, can you see me on there?
Oh, okay. Could you please give your name?
It's myself, yeah. Hi, my name is Chris Marquides. I'm a senior planner with ZAP Consulting. I'm here in Sam's absence.
Thank you. And would you please give your name for the clerk? Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay.
Just 1 second. Mr. Colburn.
If I may, Your Worship, through you to council, just prior to the presentation, if I could give council just some background of which I've included in my staff report, but just sort of to quickly go through that to give some background to this particular development. This particular development came to council in 2020. The original development was looking at 100 units in 3 buildings. With some amenities in terms of pickleball courts and some trails. In 2021, there was a request of council to eliminate the 3rd building, but retain the 100 units in the remaining 2 buildings. So there was some increase in the footprint of those buildings. As well as with the elimination of the 3rd building, there was the introduction of a self-storage facility or storage facility that would be utilized by the tenants of the buildings. It was noted that with underground parking, there becomes some challenges with the tenants who move in. There's some storage capacity, so that was part of that amendment. Then in 2022, there was another amendment requested. In this particular case, it was associated with the actual layout of the buildings on the lot. The original plan had them basically running, if you will, from Hampton Road back into the property. Because it is a sloping property, it presented some challenges with respect to the overall amount of excavation that would be undertaken to support the development. That time it was to 2 buildings in the storage facility, as well as retaining some of the amenities. That amendment basically rotated the buildings 90 degrees, so they're running parallel with the Hampton Road. That amendment was approved, and again, it retained the 100 units and met necessary setbacks and those types of things as required by the zoning bylaw. The amendment that is before council tonight is looking at is looking at reintroducing a 3rd building. So the storage units are now eliminated. They're bringing back a 3rd building, which was part of the original plan. There are a couple of 3 variances that are being asked. Again, as council is aware, variances are considered by the Planning Advisory Committee during their review of this particular application to amend the development agreement. In my staff report, I've indicated some comments with respect to planning's opinion and perspective on those asked. They are, in terms of variances, we would consider them reasonable for this particular property. The key item that is being presented and council will give consideration to through this process is the request to increase from 100 to 160 units. So you're looking at a 60% increase in terms of the number of units on the property. That is being achieved by reducing the overall square footage of some of the 1-bedroom units within this building, which is noted in the variance. So it's about going essentially from a 41 square meter down to a 37 square meter space for the one-bedroom units, as well as obviously introducing the third apartment building into the property. So that's sort of where we are in terms of, you know, meeting the setbacks and the buffers and all those types of things based on the information that's provided to staff as part of this application process. Those elements can be achieved, and with the amendment that's proposed. From there, I will hand it off to the presenters to make comment on their ask in terms of the rationale behind their request. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you for that, Mr. Colburn. Certainly very much appreciate it. So I will again hand this over to the floor, to the presenters, and then we'll have an opportunity for questions after.
Okay, thank you. Can everybody see that presentation there? We're going to talk about site 258 Hampton Road. I'm going to actually let Jonathan introduce himself first and hand it off to him, then he can hand it back off to me here.
Your Worship and Council, we've been, so there's me, and there's also my partner, Nathan Carter. He's a resident at Quispam as well. We currently have 108 units under construction actively as we speak in the St. John area. We have 2 buildings on Dobbin Street, 54 units, and 54 unit on the west side of St. John. So we're very active right now and building lots and trying to ramp up this year to do 3 more construction projects this year coming up. I think we're technically the largest builder in the St. John area at this moment in time, which comes with all kinds of complications and problems to solve, which we're excited and feeling like we're building a very good team. I'm not sure exactly, Chris, how much I should get into the logic of it versus...
I can get into the rationale there.
Yeah, let's get into it really quick, because I know where the key points for us. So we all know that construction costs have increased significantly since this project came originally to the table. It's been a really challenge for everybody. As far as I know, there's not a long list of people waiting to build more apartments in Quispam. I know we've never gotten any offers on our land unsolicited. I think that's kind of proof in that it's difficult to make the numbers work, to get units affordable enough. I don't know if the metrics were quite right there, Dwight, but essentially like we're going, because we're still working through the design phase of this new concept, or like the new design concept, but essentially instead of having just essentially 2s and 3s, we want to have more bachelor, 1 bed, one bed plus den, 2 bathroom, 1 bathroom, like, and you know, basically on the same footprint that was originally 50 units, we can fit closer to 70 plus units on each one of those footprints by having a wider spread of rental ranges available to people, which is a way of making it more affordable. As well as we want to start with the 3rd building in the back as the first one that doesn't have underground parking. The point being that underground parking is really expensive. 50,000 plus a parking space basically is what they cost these days. So by going with the most affordable building, like lowest cost per unit in the back, that'll allow us to help make the numbers work for the whole site, as well as provide some of the more affordable units up front. We're working within the MLI Select mortgage program, which requires that a minimum of 10% of the units are within the the medium rental range for the community with 30% of their income. So that's 10% of these units alone, but I think we're going to achieve that. I think realistically, we're probably looking more at around 20 to 25% of the units are going to be below that 30% of the medium renter income in the community, just by having like those smaller units, which I think we're finding as well too. The more projects we've been doing, we're just getting a lot of people kind of right size. Even what we're building now is considered big in Ontario or Vancouver or BC, or, you know, like most of the markets, like where nobody's building the 1,250, 1,300 square foot units that we were building back in, say, 2015, 16, 17. So they're still very nice units. There's still good amenity space in the building, but we just really shrinking that unit size down. Another thing that really drove the design for this was, since our original inception of the plan in 2020 with the other storage at the back, you know, there's been 2 new storage facilities added on Millennium Drive. A lot of options. I know they're not at full capacity, either one of those. So really there's a lot more off-site storage options for the tenants now than there was previously. So we think this is kind of a wise move all around to make the numbers work. And I've got a really good, Nathan Carter came on board. We bought out the other previous partners, and we closed in May, and we're ready to move ahead this fall on grubbing and getting it to subgrade, and we want to pour our first foundation, you know, weather permitting, March or March, April range.
Cool.
Chris, keep going.
Thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, I think you covered a lot of the points that I was going to make, so thanks for that. I'll skip over some of the stuff that I had in here. So as you know, the site's you know, fairly well suited next to quite a few different public amenities, town hall, arts culture park, Firefly Park, public library, etc. And you know, Dwight did a good job going through the past process there with from 2020 to today. What we're asking for is the change to 160 units there. Maximum permitted units to 160 units by mainly reducing the unit sizes. We'll also be removing the pickleball courts and paths to increase the size of the vegetated buffer and keeping the existing vegetation around the site. So there's a few specific amendments to the DA that we're requesting. The first one is increasing maximum number of units to 160. Again, replacing the self-storage facility with that 3-story multi-residential building. Replacing the existing site plan with the revised site plan. That's this one here. And removing the project description and building elevations and replacing them with more general design requirements regulating the form or design of a future development. And requiring that building drawings be provided to and approved by the development officer for compliance with these regulations. So it allows for a bit more flexibility and adaptability as market conditions change. So we don't have to keep coming back to council to deal with kind of materials on a building. But as long as we're following the design requirements outlined in the agreement, the specific materiality and form there's a bit of more flexibility there to be adaptable to market conditions. Additionally, there's three variances to the R2 zone that we're looking for: is a reduction in the minimum lot frontage to 140 meters, allowing for the minimum floor area of 37 square meters for 1-bedroom units, and allow a minimum parking ratio of 0.75 spaces per unit. And really what these do, is, as Jonathan touched on, is the smaller units and increased densities are intended to address the growing lack of affordability in the St. John's area and develop more sustainably. These also design changes, removing the pickleball courts in the path, you know, eliminate the private amenities to preserve more of the existing vegetation and increase the buffering to neighboring homes, and also, you know, allow for, you know, better use of public recreation facilities that exist. I think there's more uptake there than having the private facilities that, you know, may or may not get uptake. And yeah. So eliminating the elevations in the agreement and including design requirements provides that enhanced flexibility to respond to rapid market shifts. So these are a couple just renders of the buildings, the 4 stories in the front and the 3-story in the back there. Just keep with that kind of natural feel. Thanks so much. Yeah, so that's all for my presentation. Happy to answer any questions that you may have going forward.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation. I will go to council. Councillor Luck, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I know that this is going to the Planning Advisory Committee as well as public hearing, so I won't belabor it, but I do have one question I thought was quite interesting. So it looks like you're decreasing the parking to 0.75. So based on my calculations, that's going to be 40 apartments or people You know, I'm guessing if there's 1 car per apartment, if you're having 160 apartments, that potentially don't have a parking spot. And I'm just curious, I know just in our demographic, I could easily see, you know, like 2 people living in an apartment but sharing a car, but I can't imagine living in the valley without any vehicle unless someone never plans on going into St. John, or like just with our bus system and the realities of living in kind of a suburban, you know, bedroom community. So I again, I guess I'm just wondering if that's going to have an impact in terms of like, are people going to be?
So as there hasn't been a lot of units added, I know like why can't people buy houses? Because seniors can't sell them because there's nowhere to move. Part of going to this like smaller unit size is we're anticipating a pretty high ratio of seniors in the building.
Mhm.
So that's part of it. There might be some other options for some parking needs later on. We've talked to some of the other landowners nearby. Sorry. That might be something we can deal with, but the reality is this is where most cities are have their parking ratios at. Especially when you get the smaller unit size, we're talking significantly less bedrooms than we ever were before.
Right.
Even a lot of communities have it on a per bedroom basis, not as a per unit
Right.
basis. So, yeah. Do you have any comments there, Chris?
No, I think Jonathan's exactly right. We're seeing a trend towards much lower parking minimums, letting the market decide, you know, what is appropriate from a parking perspective. And we're seeing that, you know, that 1-to-1 or more parking ratio is not really needed.
Right.
It's actually just overbuilt.
I guess my question is, and I agree with that in a city with public transportation and other means to get around. I'm just wondering if your data has looked at, anyway, again,
it's a risk we're willing to take
yeah.
going on this space. I mean, we see that as our risk and it'd be our tenant.
Yeah.
You know, if we don't
Yeah.
build enough parking, then maybe we
people aren't
shoot
gonna-
ourselves in the foot.
Yeah.
I encourage more transit options, Mayor. But yes, yeah. It's something that we're going to, we're very early in the site design.
Mm.
This is very high level. If we can squeeze in more parking, we will. We're going to keep working on that. But I think affordable housing is the highest need of the moment, and that's what we're really trying to focus on the site.
Yeah, I think that the point here is not to let the parking drive good design and affordability.
Thank you, Councillor Luck. And certainly with parking, that is an issue because our streets are not designed for on-street parking within the town.
Road, yeah.
Dwight Colburn, please.
Through your worship, to just sort of on that note about the reduced parking, that is a trend. We're seeing reduction in the number of spaces. We're at 1.7, we're at 1.5. Other municipalities of our size are at 1 to like 0.85. That is a trend downwards. It also, in some cases, some municipalities are actually eliminating any parking requirements. It's dictated by the design. And what it also does is it makes people start to step back and say, okay, if I'm moving to this type of living, do I have 3 vehicles? Well, I want to keep my 3 vehicles. Well, I guess this isn't the right option for me. So it forces you to think that. So it's almost in terms of, if I could relate it to a restaurant, if there's a restaurant you try to go to all the time, you can never park, are you going to go to the restaurant? So it's that you're changing your lifestyle. As well as I've noted in my staff report, what this trend that's happening in other jurisdictions, and we're going to have to be looking at it, is it again reiterates the need for us to become very, very much focused on getting better public transit in the Fundy region. As I've noted in my staff report, if we don't, I fear there's going to create an imbalance in how the region develops. And if we're talking about being an inclusive community, then inclusive includes people who don't have access to vehicles. They need some sort of form of transportation. So that is something that I've indicated in my staff report that we need to look at moving forward as these types of applications will continue to come to our municipality. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Colburn. Deputy Mayor Schreier.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, gentlemen. I have a couple of questions. One is, if you just reduced the size, you said from 41 to 37 square meters, or that was just one example?
All the units are going to be getting shrunk.
So,
sorry, go ahead.
okay, so if all the units are being shrunk, how many how many additional units would you get in one building if you shrunk?
So we're proposing 30 on the back building. And so it's an extra 60 total, so it'll be an extra 30 units added total, so 15 each for the 2 existing footprints that we had, within the same footprint that we had originally proposed.
So by shrinking.
Not just shrinking, it's also going to more 1 bed and 1 dead,
Right,
like it's
right,
a different bedroom
By
count
doing
totally.
whatever your proposal is. If you did that to the existing buildings that are already approved, the 2 buildings, that would give you an additional 30 units? So,
Yeah.
Approximately. Yeah.
so the other building would be, 30 units.
Yes, correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I had that clear in my mind. And I wanted to know what you consider the medium income or the medium rental.
Medium average income of a renter in the community. And CMHC uses those stats.
Right.
They change them every year. They're always updating them. I don't know what the exact one is right now. I know what it is on the one that I'm working on in West St. John on Dever Road at the moment, because we had to make those numbers work for that project too. I believe it was an average. So I'll start the other way. So if we have, say, for example, we're doing like around 500 square foot 1 beds on our West Side project right now. We're looking for a rental achievement of around $2 and change a foot. So we're looking at around, $1,000 or $1,100 a month rent for our 1 bedroom units. So if someone's making $30,000, for example, and I don't know, they just started doing numbers specific to the valley out here. Before they had to use the St. John median renter income, and they just started breaking that up, which has always been a point of contention. They're getting much more compliant or much more easier to work with at CMHC right now because they need more housing in a way they didn't before. So, but I don't know what the exact numbers off the top of my head. What does the average person make working at, say like a fast food for a year? Like my guess is it'd be in that like $30,000 to $30,000 range. I'm not 100% sure, but so that would put us in the 30% of the income for someone in the $30,000 a year range.
Okay, that's what I was getting at. If you're working on CMHC's formula, and I wanted to know what because they won't go.
It's not my numbers, it's their numbers.
Their number, but you're thinking of a rental unit, the lowest number would be around $1,000 for a 1 bedroom.
Yeah, we would have we haven't got to the design phase in the building.
Okay.
This is the other thing is you don't spend more than you have to on each green or red light. So you don't lose too much money in this process of development. So essentially we've got kind of like an overall square footage goals in mind for the unit counts. And we've done some basic, X amount, 2 bedrooms at 1,000. They used to be 1,250 was our standard. So there'd be like, say 1,050, and then we have our 800 and our 600 and our 500. And there are probably even some like 450, 400s, small kind of like bachelor. Maybe there'd be, 5 or 6 of them in each building, something like that.
Did you apply for any funding through the province for affordable housing?
I'm sorry, the province does not fund the valley for MB housing. I've asked like 10 years in a row.
Okay.
So far, no luck. Someone else can ask. Yeah, and
Thank you.
St. John gets all the allocation usually.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Scryer. Councillor Bigger, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much for bringing this in. And I have been asked many times by people in the last couple of years, what's going on with that, spot over there on Hampton Road? Wasn't there supposed to be a couple of big buildings there and so on and so forth? And so very interesting to see the development and appreciate this information. I live at Valley Ranch across the road from there, just up across from the elementary school.
I brokered that deal and got that together.
Okay, right on. And so in terms of parking, we have an underground spot because my partner takes materials to and from her job every day. And so it's great for her to not have to manage the elements in the winter and all that sort of thing. That's a premium, so we pay for that. If we didn't pay for that, we wouldn't have it. And we have no assigned spot in the parking lot out front, right? The above ground parking lot is it's not as though I'm in unit, such and such, and there's a painted number on a parking spot downstairs. So that is not to say that there isn't the assumption of adequate parking, but as a trend, it's not really guaranteed either, in terms of the unit I'm in. The unit we're in is about 1,100, maybe just under square feet. It's a 2-bedroom, as you say.
Designed in 2018.
That's right. That's right.
Pre-COVID 60% price increase. Yeah.
That's exactly right, and it is a bit largesse by trend, sort of dictates these days. And I know that when Jennifer from Dillon, who was here tonight presenting to us, when she was presenting some months ago related to trends in housing and when we were talking about gentle densification in our community, I remember her challenging us that we were going to have to begin to change our mindset a little bit. The culture was going to probably have to change somewhat about proximity and, space. And I can say that, there's a variety of, as you would know, there's a variety of different apartment sizes, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom, basically, in the building I'm in. The 3-bedroom seems almost kind of gargantuan, frankly, in my mind.
Square feet.
Yeah, they're very, very spacious, palatial, but I think that this trend is representative. All I'm trying to say is I believe that this is reflective, generally speaking, of meeting the needs that we see developing in our community related to multi-unit housing, and it is a large project for sure, and it won't be without, I expect, some opinions related to maybe its growth in that regard. But certainly, generally speaking, it seems to be commensurate with the trends that we see happening in other jurisdictions. And I think I just consider the needs of housing in relation to our community, and it does seem to be kind of weave into that. I had a question from the development officer's report on page 5 at the top. I believe perhaps it was your colleague who's on virtually mentioned this as well. It says amendment item 4 provides for more flexibility in the building facade based on being restricted by specific design criteria in the development agreement, which can present challenges as presented in the planning rationale document from the applicant. The proposed approach is acceptable and an approach that is utilized in other municipalities. Now then below, it says under additional information required, civil design drawings have been developed at this stage, but will be required as part of the permitting process. And I just wanted to make sure, is there any correlation between those two statements? And what I mean to say is, for example, where I live, I notice in these lovely drawings, they seem to be glass and rail balconies, for example, more by virtue of the renderings I see here. And the building I live in was originally designed to be that way. Now there were it was in the middle of all of the supply chain problems, which caused many delays on the, which caused many delays on that building being done. But is that what we're talking about here? Is that there are accommodations that can be allowed up to a certain level because of material supply and et cetera, but that has to be all finalized before permitting can occur? Perhaps I should direct that to our development.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Okay.
Basically, the existing DA has a very strict material palette and design elements that are very, very much non-flexible. It is difficult, again, when you're going through the development stages and getting to your detailed design and trying to source materials. It really can be. The flexibility of materials is important because it can make or break a project from a cost perspective. So having that flexibility, so we're basically eliminating that strict, facade and project rationale that's on the building elevations that are in the DA and applying some kind of, here are the things that here are the possible criteria, material selections or material selections that we don't want, absolutely, but everything else is okay. That allows for more flexibility to be and greater ability to respond to the market and construction cost escalation.
Okay, I appreciate that. I only ask because in the case of the place where I live, many of the residents felt that the changes that were made by the builder that were apparently allowed for, according to the property company that bought the building, which I won't name over this public microphone. Many of the residents subsequently sort of groaned about some of the aesthetic changes and felt that it wasn't reflective of essentially what was advertised to them. So that's why I'm asking about that. So I appreciate that information. I'll just quickly, the last thing I'll say is maybe this gives a bit of clarity to the Valley. As of September 1st, we pay $2,050 for our apartment. That's what we pay for a 2-bedroom apartment in Quispamsis, $2,050. So it's
How many square feet is it?
1,100 maybe, something like that. Yeah. So
That's cheap, Mike.
yeah. Gee, thanks. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't do the same today, honestly.
Right,
And that's
right.
with incredibly, like, they have, like, it's been hard to predict the path for these projects. Just, if you don't mind me just explain a little bit. The CMHC rules, I'm not even joking, have changed every 6 months. The goalposts that you have to get through on efficiency, on affordability, on the amortization, on the interest rate, on they keep changing the program because everyone knows that the most important issue is housing right now. And so, like, you could not build this in the middle of COVID. It isn't possible. The numbers didn't work on a 25-year AM. And then all of a sudden interest rates went up 3 points, 4 points. Like, we're talking significantly more interest service costs to your debt, to the debt associated with the project. So they bumped up the amortization. Like, the buildings that we'll be building here, there'll be 50-year mortgages. I'm going to be long dead before they're paid off. Maybe we'll get a little equity. I don't know, but it's a big gamble, and they keep changing it, trying to make it work better. But, like, I'm telling you, what we're even applying for now in this project, because we have 108 units under construction right now, and it takes 12-month mortgage approval process, 5 months permit process. If Quispamsis wants more apartments, you really got to stand out, because every other municipality is asking too. I'm also building apartments in Bridgewater, Lunenburg right now, because they're offering us awesome deals, great deals on lands. $20,000 plus for every unit we put in. Like, they're more desperate than you are, believe it or not. So, like, those kind of things, like, I'd love to work together in the future to see what we can do to make it happen.
I just mentioned the size of our unit and the price because it, of course, is. I think that's a reflection of there are a lot of people who would not be able. I mean, look, you say it's cheap. I take your point. I know what you're saying.
I'm saying you could get the same price.
Yes, I get it. But
the bank
it's
would lend me the money to build your building.
Yeah. I mean, we went from a mortgage payment combined because we lived in a house with a granny suite where my partner's mother lived as well. So our commitment towards the mortgage monthly was $500 to a $2,000 a month apartment. Right? And we don't have a yard, a house, et cetera, et cetera. So no equity and so on. So that's what people are facing. And so I think that mitigation of unit size and a variation of studio and 1-bedrooms and 1-bedrooms with den, I do think that is intelligence that you're activating on there related to the market. Yeah. So anyway, thank you very much.
I think there's strong demand for
Thank you. Councillor Olson, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move that council set a public hearing date for September 17th, 2024 at 6 p.m. and refer to the Planning Advisory Committee for its written views on the application to amend the 258 Hampton Road Section 59 Development Agreement and notify and engage all property owners within 100 meters of the subject property of the proposed amendment and provide details of the public hearing.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Bigger on the question. Please vote now. Motion carried. Thank you very much for your presentations this evening, gentlemen. I'm sure we'll be hearing from you in the future.
Anyone ever wants to see any of the projects we have under construction, please give me a shout. I'd be happy to take you for a walkthrough. Thanks.
Thank you. Item number 10 is bylaws. There are none. Item number 11, new business, Maple Ridge Estates Phase 5D, Future Street to a public street. We need council assent on that. Councillor Donovan.
I would move that council grant assent to Maple Ridge Estates Phase 5D subdivision plan to permit approval of the plan by the development officer so that the plan can be registered with the province and the public street vests to the town on registration of the plan.
Moved by Councillor Donovan, seconded by Councillor Olson. On the question. Please vote now. Motion carried 6-0. Item number 12 is reports. No comments. Deputy Mayor Squire.
Yes, Your Worship. I just wanted to ask the Director of Engineering or Mr. Colburn on the housing starts. Looks like, if I'm reading it right, it looks like the numbers have slowed down a little bit compared to last year. So, but our numbers are still healthy. The numbers are healthy, and that's, so I'm just wondering with the amount of, talk about housing, and I know that our housing is a little bit different in Quispamsis as to what's being built. Any insight as to why the numbers might be a little bit lower, or are we going to catch up? Is there a lot coming down the tube that we're not aware of? That
Mr.
I'm not
Colburn.
aware of, I'm sorry.
Mr. Colburn, please.
Thank you, through your worship, to Deputy Mayor. So what we're looking at is, when you look at, this is June, July, I believe, so that would have been applications that would have come in within that time frame. So I think what it is in terms of contributor is the interest rates. People are sort of like, okay, where are we going? There's always that fear of, I'm getting a mortgage. Yeah, it's a downward trend. What's the long-term projection? And I think the fact that when you look at just recently, there was the move towards a 30-year harmonization of a mortgage to pull first-time home buyers into it. So that's what it is. I think when you look at things like, there's still some supply challenges, but the cost of materials and those types of things are starting to trend downward. It's basically interest rates, financial stability. So people are a little bit cautious, and I don't think it's just in the building starts in that industry. I think you look at as a whole, right? When you've got to weigh out between food, lodging, those types of things. So that's the I think the significant contributor to this. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next little while in terms of interest rates and what factor that has. But in terms of interest in building in Quispam, that's still trending upward. Yeah.
Thank you. And we will move on from reports to business arising from the whole. And there is none. I did just want to take a second. Just want to make sure people are aware of what it takes to run a town the size of Quispamsis. And the very first thing that it takes are the people that work for the town, for the residents of this community. We have our engineering department, we have our community service department, we have HR, we have our clerk, we have IT people, we have a treasury department. It goes on, but this is what makes the town work. But what keeps it all together is this big glob of glue, and I know he's going to hate that I'm referring to him as a glob of glue, but Mr. Aaron Kennedy has stepped into the position of acting CAO for the past 3.5 years. And I am very proud to have worked with him over that 3.5 years, because since this group of people as councillors have been elected, we have been working under Mr. Kennedy's guidance as he has worked for us through the town. And I know that we are having a new CAO coming here on August the 26th, and his first council meeting will be September 3rd, I believe, which means that this is Mr. Kennedy's last as serving as acting CAO. So I just want to say that Mr. Kennedy, for the past 3.5 years, I know, You have given us the guidance that was necessary in order to keep this town running and operating and to provide the services and the amenities that we have in this town. I know that you are proud of your directors. I know that you are proud of all of your staff because I hear it from Mr. Kennedy. And I know that he shares that with many of you who work with him and for him. So, Mr. Kennedy, thank you so much for all that you have done in the past 3.5 years. It is greatly appreciated. Thank you. And we will move on to adjournment. Moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Thompson. On the question, please vote now. Motion carried. Good night, everybody. Thank you for your work here this evening.